Imagine standing on the edge of a bridge, ready to end it all, until a tiny voice changes everything. What if that voice belonged to a child who saves a billionaire's life? "Sir, please don't jump," a small voice called out behind him. Ethan Walker froze on the edge of the Brooklyn Bridge, the icy wind slicing through his suit and his spirit. Below him, the East River churned in restless darkness, a black mirror reflecting the ruin of his life. One step forward and everything, his failures, his shame, would disappear into the cold. 3 days ago, he was a billionaire. Now he was a headline. His fingers clenched around the frozen railing, knuckles white against the steel. Tech mogul under investigation for fraud. His name, once spoken with respect, now dripped with contempt. His company, Vita Corp, the medical tech empire he'd built to save lives, was in federal custody. His business partner, Greg Sanders, had stolen millions through shell accounts in Ethan's name. No one believed he was innocent: the FBI, the board, the investors, even his family. His ex-wife's voice still echoed in his head. "You've humiliated us enough, Ethan." And his daughter, once his reason for working late nights, had texted only 2 words before blocking him: "Stay gone." The wind pushed against him like a dare. "Maybe they're right," he whispered. "Maybe I deserve this." Then came the voice again. "Sir, please don't do it." What happens when a desperate man meets an unbreakable spirit? Stick around on Real Life Story to find out how one candy bar changed a life forever. Ethan turned sharply. A little girl stood 10 feet away, small and fragile against the expanse of steel and fog. She couldn't have been more than 7. Her coat was thin, her shoes too big. And in her gloved hands, she clutched a battered box of candy bars. Her brown skin gleamed faintly under the bridge light, and her dark eyes watched him without fear. "Are you trying to die?" she asked, her voice trembling but steady. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Go home, kid. You don't need to see this." But she didn't move. "You shouldn't jump," she said. "The water's too cold. You'll just freeze before you stop hurting." His heart twisted. "I don't care anymore." She took a step closer. "My mama said, people say that when they forget who still loves them." That stopped him. The words landed like a blow to the chest. He stared at her, this small, stubborn child, wondering why she cared. "What's your name?" "Anna," she said. "Anna Johnson. I'm selling candy for school." She lifted the half-empty box. "But nobody's buying tonight." "No." Ethan tried to look away, but her presence anchored him. "You shouldn't be out here this late." "Neither should you," she said softly. The silence that followed felt heavy and strange. The wind howled around them, the cables groaning above their heads. "Where's your mother?" Ethan asked. Anna looked down at her shoes. "She's gone. Her heart quit last year. Grandma says God needed her smile more than we did." Ethan swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." Anna nodded, wiping her nose with her sleeve. "I wanted to go with her, too. But Grandma said, God don't take 2 from the same house at once. She said I had work to do." "What kind of work?" he asked quietly. "Keeping light on for people who lost theirs," she said. "That's what Mama used to tell me. When folks can't see hope, you got to shine yours a little brighter." She dug into her box and pulled out the last candy bar, its wrapper slightly torn. "It's my last one, but maybe you need it more than me." Ethan stared at it. The gesture was so pure, so undeserved, it made his chest ache. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, voice shaking. "'Cause you look like somebody who forgot what warm feels like." Something in him cracked. For the first time in days, he let out a breath that wasn't just pain. It was surrender. He reached out, took the candy, and stepped down from the railing. His shoes hit the concrete, solid and real. Anna smiled, revealing a missing front tooth. "See? Better down here, huh?" He managed a broken laugh. "Yeah, maybe." They stood there for a moment. Two souls from different worlds bound by something invisible. Then Anna spoke again, her voice smaller this time. You know what's funny, mister? You still got shoes. He blinked. What? My cousin Jerome. He's 12. He sleeps under the train bridge by the river. His shoes got holes in them. When it rains, he puts plastic bags on his feet. Says it keeps out the cold. She looked up at him, eyes wide and honest. You still got shoes and a coat, and somebody somewhere probably still loves you. So maybe you're luckier than most of us. Ethan froze. Her words hit harder than any accusation or insult ever could. You still got shoes. He looked down at them. Italian leather, soaked but still whole, and something inside him broke all the way open. He realized he'd been standing on the edge of a bridge thinking about what he'd lost while a 7-year-old child who had lost everything still carried light inside her. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us what part moved you the most. Remember to like the video and subscribe to Real Life Stories so you never miss the next story. Your support helps keep these voices of hope alive. Tears blurred his vision. You think I'm lucky? He whispered. Anna nodded. Yeah, lucky enough to still be here. Lucky enough to start over. He pressed the candy bar to his chest like it was something sacred. You're wise for 7. Grandma says I got an old soul, Anna replied with a shrug. But really, I just listen good. He laughed through his tears, the sound raw but alive. Come on, she said. Grandma says no sad soul should walk alone at night, especially not rich ones. He hesitated. You don't even know me. I don't have to, she said, turning toward the city lights. I can see you're cold, so he followed. They walked side by side down the bridge, the fog curling around them like a ghost that had lost its claim. Anna hummed softly, and told him about Mercy finding the broken. The rhythm of her small footsteps steadied his breathing. Where do you live? He asked. Harlem, she said. With Grandma Loretta. She makes cornbread and sweet tea and talks back to the TV when the news lies. Ethan smiled faintly. She sounds wonderful. She is, Anna said proudly. You can come if you want. Grandma says God don't send people our way by accident. Ethan stared ahead at the shimmering skyline that used to belong to him. For the first time, he didn't see a city that had taken everything. He saw one still full of light. All right, kid, he said quietly. Lead the way. As they walked, the night softened. The smell of roasted peanuts mixed with exhaust. The hum of a distant saxophone floated over the street. For once, Ethan felt the rhythm of the world without feeling its weight. When they reached Lenox Avenue, Anna pointed proudly to a brick apartment with peeling paint and a warm glow in the window. That's home, she said. Come on. Ethan followed her up the narrow stairwell. Inside, the air smelled of cinnamon and fried chicken. A woman with gray hair looked up from her sewing machine. Evening, she said. I'm Loretta Johnson, Ethan, he said softly. Your granddaughter just saved my life. Loretta looked at Anna, then back at him. Then I reckon she earned herself 2 cookies tonight. Sit down, Mr. Walker. Tea's hot. The kitchen was small, cluttered, but alive. Pictures of family, gospel music low on the radio, a pot of stew bubbling. Ethan sat at the table, feeling the warmth return to his hands. Loretta poured him sweet tea and slid it across. Sometimes God sends his angels in small packages, she said. He looked at Anna, her feet swinging, chocolate smudge on her cheek. Yeah, he whispered. And sometimes they sell candy. Loretta chuckled. Whatever storm you're walking through, son, don't let it drown you before the sun comes back up. Ethan nodded, tears stinging again. He looked down at his shoes, still whole, still his, and thought of the boy under the bridge with none. For the first time in his life, he felt gratitude, not for wealth, but for breath. Anna pushed the candy box toward him. Next time you feel like jumping, come eat candy instead. He smiled, a true trembling smile. Deal. And as he sat in that little Harlem kitchen with a chipped mug and a child's laughter filling the air, Ethan Walker, once a billionaire, now just a man, realized he was richer than he had ever been. Ethan woke up to the smell of coffee and gospel music. For a brief second, he didn't know where he was. The soft hum of the radio, the creak of floorboards, and the faint scent of cinnamon told him this wasn't his penthouse. When he opened his eyes, sunlight poured through faded curtains, landing across a chip table stacked with folded laundry. Then it all came back, the bridge, the candy bar, Anna. He sat up on the old couch where he'd fallen asleep, his back sore, but his chest strangely light. Loretta's voice floated from the kitchen. "You awake, Mr. Walker?" "Yeah," he said, rubbing his temples. "I didn't mean to fall asleep here." "You needed rest more than manners," she said kindly, walking in with 2 mugs of coffee. She handed him one. "You're lucky Anna didn't talk my ear off about you all night. She called you her bridge friend." Ethan smiled faintly. "Guess I owe her that much." Loretta studied him for a moment. "You look like a man who's been running from something." He didn't deny it. "I lost everything." "Then maybe it's time to figure out what's left," she said, sitting down across from him. "And start from there." Ethan looked around the modest apartment, the patchwork curtains, the smell of bread baking, the photo of a younger Loretta in a church choir. There was more peace here than in any of his mansions. Anna burst into the room, still in her pajamas, hair wild and energy boundless. "You didn't leave," she exclaimed, grinning. "Grandma said maybe you'd go before breakfast." "Well," Ethan said, smiling. "Your grandma makes good tea. I didn't want to miss coffee." She hopped onto a chair. "Grandma made grits and eggs. You want some?" He hadn't eaten in 2 days, but pride almost made him refuse. Then his stomach growled loudly. Anna giggled. "That's a yes." Over breakfast, Loretta asked gentle questions, where he was from, what he used to do, if he had family. Ethan tried to keep the answers vague. But Anna's curiosity was sharper than any reporter's. "You talk like the people on TV," she said. "Were you famous?" Ethan hesitated. "I was known," he said carefully. Loretta glanced at him knowingly but didn't press. "Everyone's somebody before they fall," she said softly. "The trick is learning who you are afterward." After breakfast, Ethan offered to help wash dishes. Loretta laughed. "You washing dishes?" "It's been a while," he admitted. "But I'm a quick learner." She handed him a towel. "Then start with those." As he washed, his reflection in the window caught his eye, a tired man with streaks of gray at his temples, wearing an old borrowed shirt that didn't fit. He barely recognized himself, but for the first time in months, he didn't hate what he saw. Later, Ethan stepped outside to call his lawyer from a payphone. The line went straight to voicemail. Every asset, every account still frozen. He had $3 in his pocket and nowhere to go. He leaned against the booth, staring at the Harlem street. Vendors were setting up carts. Kids in backpacks chased each other past murals of Malcolm X and Nina Simone. There was a heartbeat to this neighborhood, a rhythm that said, "We've survived worse." Anna appeared beside him, holding her candy box like a treasure chest. "Grandma says if you're staying for lunch, you've got to help me sell candy first." Ethan smiled despite himself. "You're quite the boss." "I learned from Grandma," she said proudly. "She says a person's got to earn their keep." Together, they walked the busy sidewalks. Anna called out cheerfully to passers-by. 2 for $1, all for the community center fundraiser. People smiled, bought candy, and dropped coins into her box. Ethan noticed how she lit up when they thanked her, how she met each stranger with open warmth. He envied the ease of belonging, something money had never bought him. "You're good at this," he said as they rested on a bench. "You make people feel seen." "Mama said people like to be noticed," Anna replied. "Sometimes all it takes to change someone's day is looking them in the eye." Ethan nodded, his throat tight. He thought of all the faces he'd ignored on his way to meetings, the drivers, janitors, and assistants who'd smiled politely while he looked past them. Your mama was right, he said quietly. Anna studied him for a moment. You still sad? Yeah, he admitted, but not like before. She grinned. Then I'm doing my job. That afternoon, Loretta had Ethan help her fix the loose railing on the apartment stairs. He worked with borrowed tools, his hands clumsy from years of boardrooms instead of labor. Yet there was comfort in the physical effort, the creak of wood, the smell of dust, the simple act of mending something broken. You ever build something with your hands before? Loretta asked. Only companies, he said. Maybe that's why it all fell apart. Buildings fall too, she said. Doesn't mean we stop building. As they worked, Loretta told him stories about her youth marching in civil rights rallies, teaching school through the crack epidemic, raising her daughter alone. Ethan listened, humbled. These people lived on faith and grit, things he'd only spoken about in speeches, but never understood. When evening came, they sat by the window as the city lights flickered on. Anna leaned against him, half asleep. You think you'll stay long? Loretta asked. Ethan hesitated. I don't know. I don't even know where to start. Start by eating, she said, handing him a bowl of stew. Start by resting. Tomorrow will find you soon enough. He smiled faintly. You talk like a preacher. I talk like a woman who's buried enough people to know what matters, she said, smiling softly. And right now, what matters is you're still here. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. The sounds of the building, the hum of a neighbor's TV, the clatter of pipes were foreign, but oddly soothing. He looked at Anna curled up on the couch opposite him, hugging his stuffed rabbit with one eye missing. He thought about the words she'd said on the bridge. You still got shoes. The simplicity of it cut deeper than any sermon. Somewhere out there, a boy was sleeping under a bridge without any. And he, Ethan Walker, man of privilege, had been ready to throw his life away because his name was tarnished. Maybe Anna was right. Maybe he was still lucky. The next morning, he rose early and walked to a nearby park. Homeless men gathered near the benches, some chatting, some staring into space. He sat beside an older man with weathered hands. Morning, Ethan said. The man nodded. You new out here? Sort of. You'll get used to it, the man said. First time's the hardest. Ethan looked at the man's shoes, torn sneakers held together by tape, and felt that twisted shame again. You always been here? 6 years, the man said. Lost my job. Wife passed. Didn't bounce back. He extended a hand. Jimmy. Ethan shook it. Ethan. Jimmy smiled. Well, Ethan, Street Luke's does breakfast at 7. Free coffee. Real eggs if you're lucky. You coming? Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, I'll come. As they walked toward the church, the rising sun painted the Harlem rooftops gold. For the first time since his fall, Ethan wasn't thinking about what he'd lost, only about the steps ahead of him. He remembered Anna's small voice on the bridge. You're lucky enough to start over. Maybe, he thought, that was exactly what he was doing. The church basement smelled of coffee and pancake syrup. Ethan followed Jimmy down the narrow steps into a crowded room filled with voices, laughter, and the clatter of trays. A hand-painted sign over the door read, Street Luke's Community Breakfast. All are welcome. The warmth inside hit him like sunlight after months of rain. Volunteers in aprons moved between long folding tables, pouring coffee, serving oatmeal, handing out smiles. Ethan hesitated near the doorway, feeling the old reflex of self-consciousness. A man who used to dine with senators was now waiting in line for free breakfast. But no one looked at him with judgment. No one cared who he'd been. They just saw another hungry man. Jimmy nudged him forward. Get yourself a plate, brother. Humility goes down easier with syrup. Ethan smiled faintly and joined the line. When he reached the counter, an older woman with gray curls and kind eyes ladled oatmeal into a bowl and added a slice of toast. First time here, sweetheart? She asked. Yeah, Ethan admitted. You'll get used to it. We all need help sometimes, she said warmly. I'm Ruth. Ethan. Well, Ethan, welcome to the living. She winked and moved on to the next person. He sat beside Jimmy at a long table where men traded jokes and stories. One man missing 2 front teeth asked if Ethan was the Wall Street type. Ethan chuckled. I was something like that. Jimmy elbowed him. Translation, he was rich. The men laughed and Ethan found himself laughing, too. For the first time in months, it didn't sound hollow. After breakfast, Ethan helped clean up, stacking trays and wiping tables. Ruth watched him from across the room. You've got good hands, she said. You ever think about volunteering here? We could use help on Saturdays. Ethan hesitated. I don't have a place to stay yet. Honey, that's not what I asked, she said with a grin. You can help weather. You've got a mansion or a park bench. Her words lingered long after he left. He walked back toward Harlem, the morning sunlight warming his face. The city seemed different now, not a battlefield, but a living, breathing thing. He passed a mural of Martin Luther King Jr. with the words, "Keep going anyway," painted underneath. For the first time since his world collapsed, Ethan felt the message was meant for him. When he reached Loretta's building, Anna was sitting on the front steps, swinging her legs and humming to herself. You went somewhere, she said when she saw him. I thought maybe you left. Just breakfast, Ethan said. With a friend. Jimmy? Yeah, he said surprised. How'd you know? Grandma says everybody in Harlem knows Jimmy. He talks a lot. Anna held up her candy box. Want to help me again? Grandma says I can't go too far today, but we can walk to the corner store. Ethan nodded. Sure, boss. As they walked, Anna chattered about school, her favorite cartoon, and how she wanted to be a doctor who makes robots. Ethan listened, smiling at her big dreams. When they stopped near the bodega, Anna waved at the shop owner, Mr. Torres, who came outside wiping his hands on an apron. Morning, sugar. Who's your friend? He asked. This is Mr. E, Anna said proudly. He's helping me sell candy. You pick good company, Torres said, eyeing Ethan's face. You look familiar. Ethan's stomach tightened. Probably from TV, Anna said innocently. He's kind of famous. Ethan forced a laugh. Not anymore. Torres studied him for a second, then shrugged. Fame don't buy peace, he said. Coffee's on the house if you want. Ethan smiled gratefully. Inside the bodega, the air was thick with the scent of ground coffee and old wood. As they sat by the window, Anna unwrapped a lollipop. Mr. E, she said suddenly. Why were you on that bridge? Ethan looked at her small, serious face. Because I thought I'd lost everything, he said softly. Did you? She asked. Not anymore, he replied. Anna thought about that, then nodded. Good, 'cause Mama used to say, when you think you've lost everything, that's when God starts showing you what really matters. Ethan's throat tightened. Your mama must have been something special. She was, Anna said proudly. She used to work at the big building downtown. Said one day I'd see it and remember her. What building? Ethan asked, suddenly curious. The glass one with the blue lights, Anna said. Vita Corp, I think. You heard of it? Ethan froze. His pulse spiked. Your mother worked there. Aha. She said her boss was real smart but real tired all the time. She liked him though. Said he wanted to help people. Ethan's hand trembled around his coffee cup. Do you remember his name? Anna frowned, thinking hard. Mr. Sanders, maybe. Or Mr. Walker. Yeah, Mr. Walker. She said he was good, even if folks didn't see it yet. Ethan's heart stopped. Your mother worked for me? Anna blinked. You were her boss? Ethan leaned back, dizzy. I may be. What was her name? Janelle Johnson, Anna said softly. You knew her? Ethan's eyes filled with tears. Janelle. He remembered her, a quiet, efficient assistant with a warm laugh and sharp mind. She'd worked for Greg Sanders before transferring to Ethan's department. She'd left suddenly a year ago after a family emergency. He'd never asked why. Now he knew. She was a good woman, he whispered. A really good woman. Anna smiled faintly. She said you were good, too. Ethan swallowed the lump in his throat. The coincidence or fate was too powerful to ignore. The child who'd saved his life was the daughter of a woman he had once employed and respected. Mr. E? Anna's voice was gentle. You okay? He nodded slowly. Yeah, kid. I'm just realizing how small the world really is. When they returned to the apartment, Loretta was folding laundry by the window. Ethan told her what Anna had said. The older woman paused, eyes softening. So, you were Janelle's boss. Lord, that explains everything. Everything? Ethan asked. She used to. Talk about you, Loretta said. Said her boss was kind, but the people above him were snakes. When she quit, she said she couldn't stand watching good men take the fall for bad ones. Ethan's chest tightened. Did she ever mention Greg Sanders? That the one with the fake smile? Loretta asked. She didn't trust him. Said he had a way of twisting truth till it screamed. Ethan sank into a chair, his mind racing. She must have known something. Something Greg didn't want getting out. Loretta watched him closely. You think that mess that ruined your life might be tied to her? It's possible, he said. And if it is, then I owe Janelle more than I can ever repay. Anna climbed onto his knee. Then maybe God put us in your path so you could fix it, she said simply. Ethan looked at her, this little girl with faith bigger than the world, and nodded. Maybe he did. That night, as Harlem lights shimmered through the window, Ethan sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the candy bar Anna had given him on the bridge. It was half melted now, the wrapper torn, but he couldn't bring himself to throw it away. It was his reminder, the moment his life had turned. He thought of Janelle, of Greg, of the company he'd built for good and watched burn from greed. He had a reason now. Not just to live, but to fight. He didn't know how yet. But he would. Because for the first time in months, he wasn't just surviving. He was beginning again. Ethan barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Janelle's face, her calm expression as she carried files into meetings, the quiet kindness she showed to everyone. He remembered the day she quit. She'd looked tired but peaceful, as if she'd made a hard decision she could live with. He hadn't asked questions then. Now he wished he had. The next morning, the city woke before him, Sunday car horns, delivery trucks, and street vendors filled the air with noise and movement. Ethan stood by the window in Loretta's kitchen, a mug of coffee cooling in his hand, staring at the skyline that once belonged to him. Loretta walked in, tying her robe. You look like a man with ghosts for company. I think I am, Ethan said quietly. Janelle, Anna's mom, she worked for me. She might have known something about Greg's fraud. I can't stop thinking about it. Loretta poured herself some tea and sat down. Then maybe it's time you stop thinking and start asking. He turned toward her. You think she left something behind? People who die sudden always do, Loretta said softly. Sometimes it's money. Sometimes a memory, sometimes a mess to clean up, but there's always something. Anna padded into the room, hair messy, holding her stuffed rabbit by the ear. Morning, Mr. E, she mumbled. Morning, kid, Ethan said with a smile. Sleep okay? She nodded and climbed into a chair. I dreamed about Mama. She was laughing. She said you were going to help her finish something. Ethan felt his stomach drop. Did she say what? Nope, Anna said, yawning. Just that. Loretta gave him a knowing look. Sounds like you got your marching orders. After breakfast, Ethan pulled on his coat and told Loretta he needed to check something. She didn't ask where. "You'll be careful," was all she said. He took the subway downtown. The Vita Corp building rose above the city like a monument to his former life, glass, chrome, and steel, sleek and silent. The last time he'd been here, it was crawling with federal agents. Now it was ghostly, half-empty, with security guards watching him as he lingered outside. He couldn't go in. His credentials were revoked. But he didn't need to. Across the street was a cafe where Janelle used to get her coffee every morning. He remembered because she always brought him 1, 2 extra sugar. He sat at a corner table, staring out the window at the building he'd built. He thought of the people inside, the few who'd stayed after the scandal, and wondered how many still believed he was guilty. A voice interrupted his thoughts. "You look like a man trying to make peace with ghosts." Ethan looked up. It was Jennifer Price, the investigative journalist who had covered his downfall. Her sharp eyes missed nothing. She looked older now. Or maybe just more tired. "Jennifer," he said cautiously. "Didn't expect to see you here." "I could say the same," she replied, sliding into the seat across from him. "I thought you disappeared." "I almost did," he said quietly. "But something pulled me back." Her expression softened. "Rumor was you were innocent. But Greg Sanders made sure that story never saw daylight." "You always had good instincts," Ethan said. "That's why I need your help." She leaned in. "I'm listening." "Janelle Johnson," he said. "She used to work for me. Died of heart failure last year. Her daughter, Anna, found me on the bridge. She's the one who stopped me that night." Jennifer blinked. "Wait, the little girl from Harlem?" "Yes, her mother may have known something about the fraud, something she never got the chance to share." Jennifer's eyes narrowed. "You think she left evidence?" "I don't know, but I owe it to her and to myself to find out." Jennifer nodded slowly. "I'll look into it. Vita Corp still scares most people, but I've got contacts who aren't afraid of Greg Sanders." "Thank you," Ethan said. She studied him for a moment. "You look different, Ethan. The last time I saw you, you were a man trying to save his reputation. Now you look like someone trying to save something real." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I finally figured out what's worth saving." They agreed to meet again in 2 days. As she left, she turned back once. "Be careful. Greg's the kind of man who doesn't bury mistakes. He buries people." Ethan left the cafe with her warning echoing in his head. Back in Harlem, Anna and Loretta were sitting on the stoop playing cards. Anna waved as he approached. "You were gone all day. Did you find something?" "Not yet," he said, crouching beside her. "But I met someone who's going to help." Loretta looked up from her cards. "That woman on the news? The one who called your trial a circus?" Ethan chuckled. "The same one." "Well," Loretta said, gathering the cards. "Circus or not, sounds like you're finally picking your fight." That evening, Ethan helped Anna with her homework at the kitchen table. She was learning multiplication and kept counting on her fingers. 8 times 6, he asked. She frowned. 48. "Close," he said. "Try again." She sighed dramatically. "Math is hard." He smiled. "It used to be hard for me, too." "You're smart, though," she said. "Mama said you were the kind of smart that makes other people nervous." Ethan froze, remembering the day Janelle had told him something similar. "Maybe too smart," she'd said back then, smiling. "Smart people get trapped in their own heads." Anna tilted her head. "You okay, Mr. E?" "Yeah," he said softly. "Just remembering your mom." Later that night, when Anna went to bed, Ethan stepped out onto the fire escape. The city glowed beneath him, a tapestry of light and noise. Somewhere out there, Greg Sanders was still free, still powerful, still lying. Ethan took a deep breath. He wasn't that man on the bridge anymore. He had purpose now, and that purpose had a name. Anna. 2 days later, Jennifer called. "You were right," she said. "I found Janelle Johnson's old employee file. Greg tried to have it deleted, but an IT tech archived it off-site. She reported irregularities in company accounts 3 months before she resigned. Her report was marked confidential for executive review only. The only people who saw it were you and Greg." Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. "I never saw it." "I believe you," Jennifer said. "Which means Greg buried it. But there's something else, you might want to sit down." "I'm listening." "She transferred a copy of her report to an external drive before she died. I traced it to her last known address in Harlem." Ethan's pulse quickened. "Loretta's apartment." "Possibly," Jennifer said. "If the drive still exists, it could prove your innocence. But if Greg finds out, he won't stay quiet." When the call ended, Ethan stood in the hallway, his heart pounding. Loretta stepped out of the kitchen. "You look like a man who just found a ghost." He nodded slowly. "Maybe I did." "What kind?" "The kind that can change everything." That night, while the city slept, Ethan sat by the window, watching the fog roll across the Harlem rooftops. He thought of Janelle, of Greg, of the drive that might still hold the truth. And as he watched the first light of dawn creep over the horizon, he whispered to himself, "This time I won't run." Ethan spent the next morning pacing the apartment, his mind racing. Every sound made him flinch, the groan of pipes, a door closing somewhere down the hall, the buzz of the city below. Loretta watched him from the kitchen, stirring a pot of oatmeal. "You're wearing a hole in my floor, Mr. Walker. Sit down before I start charging rent." He managed a thin smile. "Can't sit." "Not yet." She raised an eyebrow. "Then whatever's eaten you, spit it out." Ethan lowered his voice. "Loretta, Jennifer found something. Your daughter Janelle, she filed a report about Greg Sanders, the man who framed me. It was deleted, but she saved a copy. On an external drive." Loretta's spoon froze in midair. "A drive? You think it's here?" "It has to be," he said. This was her last address. If she hid it anywhere, it'd be somewhere close to Anna. Loretta set the spoon down slowly. "Lord have mercy. You mean she died trying to protect proof against that man?" Ethan nodded, guilt washing through him. "If I'd been paying attention back then, if I'd asked questions, I might have saved her." "Stop right there," Loretta said firmly. "You didn't kill my baby, and guilt won't bring her back. But if that proof can clear your name and show the world what she died fighting for, then you better find it." Anna wandered in, rubbing her eyes. "What proof?" Ethan knelt in front of her. "Hey, sweetheart, remember when your mama used to tell you that secrets can be good if they protect people?" Anna nodded solemnly. "She said some secrets are like light. You hide them until the dark's gone." "Right," Ethan said softly. "I think your mama left one of those lights behind. Something to help make things right." Anna's eyes widened. "You mean like a superhero clue?" "Exactly like that." Loretta exhaled. "Well, then let's find your mama's light." They started in Janelle's old room, a small space that Loretta now used for storage. The walls still had faint marks where family photos had once hung. The bed was neatly made, a folded quilt at its foot. Ethan knelt by the dresser, opening each drawer carefully. Receipts, letters, an old church bulletin, but nothing that looked like a drive. Anna climbed onto the bed, her little hands brushing over the quilt. "Mama made this," she said proudly. "Said every stitch was a prayer." Ethan's eyes softened. "She must have loved you very much." Loretta rummaged through a closet, muttering. "If she hid something, she didn't make it easy." "Janelle was careful," Ethan said. "She knew Greg would come after anyone who crossed him. If she suspected something, she wouldn't leave it where he could find it." Anna suddenly gasped. "Wait. Mama used to tell me a story about angels hiding treasure under the floorboards so bad people couldn't steal it. Loretta looked up sharply. Under the floorboards? Anna jumped off the bed and pointed to the corner near the window. Right there, she said. Angels keep secrets under the window so the sun can find them first. Ethan's heart kicked. He crossed the room, knelt, and ran his fingers along the floor. One of the boards felt loose. Loretta, do you have a screwdriver? She returned with a small toolbox. Ethan pried up the plank carefully. Beneath it lay a thin envelope wrapped in wax paper and a small flash drive, dusty but intact. He lifted it slowly, reverently. The room was silent except for the faint hum of traffic outside. Anna whispered, "That's it, isn't it?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah, kid. This is your mama's light." Loretta crossed herself. "Thank you, Jesus." He slipped the drive into his pocket and replaced the board. His pulse was hammering. "I need to get this to Jennifer. If the data is still there, it'll prove everything." Loretta frowned. "And if that man finds out?" "He can't," Ethan said. "Not until we know what's on it." That afternoon, he met Jennifer at a small public library on 145th Street. The computer lab was empty except for a student dozing over his laptop. Jennifer looked up as Ethan entered. "You found it?" He placed the drive on the table. Janelle hid it under a floorboard. Jennifer gave a low whistle. "Smart woman." She plugged it into her laptop. The screen flickered, loading a series of folders labeled Accounts, Internal Memos, and Confidential. As they clicked through, Ethan's breath caught. There were spreadsheets showing offshore transfers, fake vendor invoices, and internal emails between Greg and 2 board members. Each document was timestamped and digitally signed. "This is it," Jennifer murmured. "It's everything." She opened a video file. Janelle appeared on screen, thinner than he remembered, but composed. Her voice was steady. "If you're seeing this, I couldn't deliver this myself. Greg Sanders has been falsifying reports and moving company funds. I've tried to report it internally, but my messages are being intercepted. I've copied everything here. If something happens to me, please protect my daughter, Anna, and make sure the truth comes out." The screen froze. Ethan pressed his hands over his face. Jennifer whispered, "She knew. She knew he'd come after her." He nodded, his throat tight. "And now he's going to come after us." Jennifer saved multiple encrypted copies of the files and handed him one on a separate drive. "We'll give this to the authorities. But Ethan, you need to be careful. Greg still has friends in high places." "I can handle it," Ethan said. "But I won't let him bury Janelle twice." When Ethan returned to Harlem, the evening sky was bruised purple. Anna ran to meet him. "Did you find Mama's light?" He smiled, kneeling to her level. "I did. And it's brighter than ever." She threw her arms around his neck. "Mama's going to be so proud." Loretta stood in the doorway, tears glistening. "Whatever comes next, you remember, Mr. Walker. God don't give you battles to break you. He gives you battles to build you." Ethan nodded. "Then I guess it's time to fight." That night, as he sat by the window watching Harlem glow beneath the streetlights, Ethan felt something shift inside him. For months he'd lived like a man who'd already died. But now he had proof. Proof of truth, of injustice, of purpose. The world had taken his fortune, his name, his pride. But now, holding Janelle's drive in his hands, Ethan realized something deeper. It hadn't taken his soul. Tomorrow he would go to the FBI. Tomorrow he would make this right. But somewhere downtown in a glass office lit by moonlight, Greg Sanders poured himself a drink and stared at a photo on his phone. Ethan stepping out of Loretta's building. He smiled coldly. "So that's where you've been hiding." Greg Sanders' office overlooked the city like a throne built from glass and arrogance. The skyline glittered below him, every light a reminder of his power, every shadow a secret he owned. But that night, his reflection in the window looked different, older, harder, desperate. He swirled the bourbon in his glass, watching the amber liquid catch the city's glow. "Walker's alive," he muttered. His assistant, a slim man with cold eyes named Pierce, stood silently near the door. "He's been seen in Harlem, a small apartment building on 133rd. And he's been meeting with Jennifer Price." Greg's jaw tightened. "The journalist?" "Yes, sir. She's been snooping again. According to our source, she's asking questions about Janelle Johnson." Greg turned sharply. "That woman's been dead for a year. What does she matter now?" Pierce hesitated. "Apparently she left something behind." Greg's grip on the glass tightened until it cracked. "She left me a problem. One that should have been handled." He set the broken glass on the desk and leaned forward. "If Walker found something, anything connected to her, I want it gone. You understand?" "Yes, sir." Quietly, Greg added, his voice low and dangerous. "No police, no noise. If he wants to play hero, let's remind him how villains win." Pierce nodded and left. Greg turned back to the window, the bourbon dripping from his fingers. For the first time in years, he felt the faint tremor of fear. He buried it quickly beneath rage. "You should have stayed dead, Ethan." Across town, Ethan couldn't sleep. The flash drive lay on the table beside him, glinting under the lamp like something sacred. Loretta and Anna were asleep, their breathing soft through the thin walls. He replayed Janelle's message over and over, every word slicing through him. She'd trusted him, trusted that someone good would find the truth. Now it was up to him to finish what she started. At dawn, he headed out, taking the subway downtown. The train rattled through the tunnels, lights flickering across tired faces. A woman in scrubs dozed against the window. A man hummed softly to himself. Ethan found himself studying them, the quiet dignity of people who worked, struggled, endured. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for all of them. He met Jennifer outside a diner near Federal Plaza. The air smelled of rain and coffee. She wore a dark coat and a worried expression. "I didn't sleep," she said. "Neither did I," he replied. They slid into a booth. Jennifer opened her laptop, her fingers trembling slightly. "I sent the files to two people I trust. One at the Chronicle, one at the Bureau. But Ethan, there's something you need to know." "What?" "Someone's been following me since last night." Ethan's stomach dropped. Greg or someone working for him. "I can't prove it yet," but she stopped mid-sentence as her eyes flicked to the window. "Don't turn around." Black sedan across the street. Ethan glanced casually at his reflection in the window. Two men sat inside the car, one pretending to read a newspaper. His pulse quickened. "They're not here for me," he said quietly. "They're here for the drive." Jennifer swallowed hard. "We can't go to the FBI until we know who we can trust. Greg has friends everywhere. Then we'll find someone who can't be bought." Jennifer hesitated. "I might know one person, Special Agent Harold Clean. He left the Bureau last year after exposing corruption in the Financial Crimes Division. If anyone can help, it's him. Can you reach him?" She nodded. "But we'll need to move fast. If those men follow me, they'll find Loretta and Anna." Ethan's jaw set. "Then I'll lead them away." Jennifer looked alarmed. "Ethan," he was already sliding out of the booth. "Get to Klein. I'll call you when it's safe." Outside, the morning rush had begun. Ethan walked quickly, feeling the eyes on him. He crossed streets, ducked through a market, and finally broke into a run. The sedan's engine roared to life behind him. For a man who hadn't run in months, Ethan found new strength. He darted into an alley, climbed a chain-link fence, dropped into a crowded courtyard. The car couldn't follow here. He pushed through a side gate, emerging onto a street lined with buses and delivery trucks. He spotted a cab pulling away from the curb. Taxi, he shouted, jumping in. Harlem, 133rd and Lenox, and step on it. The driver eyed him in the rearview mirror. You in trouble, man? Just late for something important, Ethan said, forcing a calm he didn't feel. The ride north was a blur of sirens, horns, and flashing lights. Ethan kept checking behind them. The sedan appeared twice, then vanished. By the time he reached Loretta's building, his shirt clung to him with sweat. He climbed the stairs 2 at a time. Loretta was in the hallway folding laundry. She looked up, startled. Lord, you look like you've seen a ghost. Close enough, Ethan said. Where's Anna? In her room. What happened? Greg knows, he said grimly. He knows we have the evidence. Loretta's hand went to her chest. Oh, dear God. Ethan moved too. The window, peering down at the street. Nothing yet. We have to get Anna somewhere safe. Loretta squared her shoulders. There's a church 2 blocks over, Street Luke's. Pastor Jerome owes me favors. You take her there. I'll pack what we need. Ethan nodded. Thank you. A small voice called from the hallway. Mr. E? Anna stood there clutching her stuffed rabbit, her eyes wide. Why are you scared? Ethan knelt, trying to steady his voice. I'm not scared, kid. Just being careful. She frowned. You're lying. You always look like that when you're scared. He smiled despite everything. You're too smart for me. She touched his face gently. Mama used to say, when you're scared, that means you still care. So don't be ashamed. He swallowed hard. I'm not ashamed, Anna. I'm grateful. Down the street, an engine idled. Ethan looked out the window again and froze. The black sedan had returned this time, parking right across the street. 2 men stepped out, scanning the building. Loretta, he said sharply. We have to move now. She grabbed a bag from the couch. Go out the back. The alley leads to the church. Ethan scooped Anna into his arms. Hold on tight. As they slipped down the back stairs, Anna whispered in his ear. Are we running away? He nodded. Just until we can make things right. Outside, rain had begun to fall, soft at first, then steady. Ethan kept to the shadows, moving quickly through the narrow alley. He could hear voices behind them, the echo of boots. The men were closing in. When they reached the end of the alley, Street Luke's steeple rose ahead like a promise. He pushed through the heavy doors, breathless. The church was empty except for flickering candles and the faint sound of organ music from a distant room. Pastor Jerome emerged from the side hall, wiping his hands. Ethan Walker, he said, surprised. Haven't seen you since your name was all over the news. Long story, Ethan panted. We need a place to hide, for now. Jerome's gaze shifted to Anna and then to Loretta, who'd just entered behind them. He nodded once. God's house doesn't turn away the hunted. Come. Ethan followed him to a small room behind the sanctuary. As the door closed, thunder rolled over Harlem. For the first time in weeks, Ethan felt something new rising inside him. Not fear this time, but resolve. Greg Sanders wanted war. He just found out Ethan Walker had something stronger than money. Stronger than lies. He had truth and something to live for. And he wasn't running anymore. The rain turned into a storm by nightfall. Thunder rolled above Harlem and lightning flashed through the stained glass windows of Street Luke's church, painting streaks of red and blue light across the walls. Ethan stood near the backroom window, peering through the curtains. The black sedan was still parked across the street. 2 silhouettes sat inside, unmoving like shadows waiting for permission to strike. Pastor Jerome stood beside him, his arms crossed. You brought danger with you, Ethan. I didn't mean to, Ethan said quietly. But it's here anyway. The pastor nodded. Evil doesn't need an invitation. It just needs opportunity. Loretta sat on a wooden pew, praying softly. Anna was curled up beside her, clutching her stuffed rabbit, eyes heavy with exhaustion. Ethan looked at her and felt the familiar ache in his chest, the same one he'd felt on that bridge before everything changed. But this time it wasn't despair. It was fear. Fear of losing her. Pastor Jerome placed a heavy hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You could leave the city tonight," he said. "I have friends who can get you out quiet. Take the girl and disappear until it's safe." Ethan shook his head. "Running won't fix this. If I vanish, Greg wins. He gets to keep everything, his money, his reputation, his lies. And Janelle's death means nothing." The pastor studied him for a moment. "You sound like a man ready to face the storm." "I am," Ethan said, his jaw set. "But I won't let the storm take her with me." As the night deepened, the church grew quiet. Loretta dozed off beside Anna. Pastor Jerome lit a candle and left it burning at the altar. Ethan sat in the back, thinking of Jennifer and the files now in her possession. If she'd reached Agent Klein by now, they might have a chance. But Greg's reach was long and his threats were real. A noise broke through the silence, a soft tap against glass. Ethan turned toward the window. Another tap. He stood, heart pounding. Jerome stepped beside him, whispering, "Stay behind me." The window cracked open an inch. "Ethan," a voice hissed. "It's me, Jennifer." She slipped inside, soaked from the rain, her hair plastered to her face. "We need to move now." Ethan grabbed her arm. "What happened?" "They know. Greg's people intercepted my call to Klein. The bureau's compromised. He's got someone on the inside feeding him information. I barely got out." "Does he know where we are?" Jennifer nodded grimly. "They followed me here. You've got 10 minutes, maybe less." Ethan's blood ran cold. He looked toward the pews where Anna slept, blissfully unaware. "We can't let them find her." Loretta stirred awake as he spoke. "What's wrong?" Ethan knelt beside her. "We're leaving now." Jerome stepped forward. "There's a service tunnel under the choir loft. Old Prohibition route comes out by the river. You can get out unseen." Jennifer checked her watch. "We'll need to move fast." As thunder cracked overhead, they gathered their few belongings. Ethan lifted Anna gently into his arms. She murmured something in her sleep, "Don't go, Mama," before resting her head on his shoulder. They followed Jerome through the narrow hall behind the altar. The tunnel entrance was hidden behind a false wall, dusty and damp. The smell of earth and old wood filled the air. "Stay close," Jerome whispered, handing Ethan a flashlight. "And God with you." They started down the dark passage, their footsteps echoing softly. Water dripped from the ceiling. Jennifer led the way, the beam of her phone light cutting through the gloom. Halfway through, they heard footsteps above them, heavy, fast. Then the sound of a door slamming open. Voices. "They're here," Jennifer hissed. Ethan moved faster, holding Anna tight. The tunnel curved sharply, ending at a rusted metal door. Jennifer shoved at it, but it barely budged. "It's jammed." Ethan handed Anna to Loretta and threw his shoulder against the door. Once, twice. The hinges groaned. On the third hit, it burst open, the night air rushing in like salvation. They stumbled out onto a narrow street near the Hudson River. Rain sheeted down, blurring the lights of the city. Jennifer pointed toward a line of parked cars. "There, the blue sedan. It's mine." As they ran, a gunshot cracked behind them, followed by shouts. Ethan spun around, shielding Anna with his body. A dark figure appeared at the tunnel mouth. Pierce, Greg's enforcer. "Go!" Ethan shouted. "Get her in the car." Jennifer grabbed Loretta and Anna, pulling them toward the vehicle. Ethan turned to face Pierce, the rain stinging his eyes. Pierce leveled a gun at him. "You should have stayed gone, Walker." Ethan raised his hands slowly. You really want to kill a man in front of a church? Pierce sneered. I don't care where I do it. My boss wants the drive. Ethan felt the weight of it in his pocket, Janelle's drive. The truth that could end everything. He met Pierce's eyes. Then tell your boss he'll have to dig it out of the river. Before Pierce could react, Ethan hurled the flash drive into the dark water. It vanished with a small splash. Pierce fired. The bullet missed, ricocheting off a lamp post. Ethan lunged forward, tackling him. The gun clattered across the pavement. They struggled, rain slicking their hands, boots slipping on the wet street. Ethan, Jennifer's voice cut through the chaos. She threw open the car door. Come on. Ethan shoved Pierce back and sprinted for the sedan. Another shot rang out, tearing through his coat sleeve. He dove into the passenger seat. Jennifer floored the gas. The tires screeched, water spraying as they sped into the storm. Loretta held Anna close in the back seat. You hit, she cried. Ethan checked his arm. A shallow graze, bleeding, but not bad. I'm fine, he said through clenched teeth. Jennifer kept her eyes on the road. Please tell me you backed up the files. Ethan smiled weakly. You really think I'd throw the only copy? Jennifer let out a shaky laugh. You're learning. They drove in silence for a long time, the storm easing into drizzle. The city lights faded behind them as they crossed into the industrial district. Ethan turned to look at Anna, asleep again, her head on Loretta's shoulder. He whispered, We're not running forever. Just until it's safe. Loretta nodded, her eyes full of quiet faith. Baby, sometimes God makes you walk through the rain so you can learn how to dance when it's gone. Ethan looked out the window at the gray horizon. He wasn't sure where they'd go next, but he knew this: Greg Sanders had fired his first shot, and Ethan Walker wasn't done fighting. By the time dawn broke, the storm had passed, leaving Harlem washed clean under a gray, heavy sky. The blue sedan sat parked beneath an overpass near the Hudson, its windows fogged with the breath of 4 exhausted souls. Ethan sat in the driver's seat now, watching the water ripple below, thinking. Loretta and Anna were asleep in the back, and Jennifer sat beside him, her hair damp, her laptop balanced on her knees. I can't believe you threw it in the river, she whispered. I didn't have a choice, Ethan said quietly. Pierce would have shot us all if I hadn't. Jennifer nodded. Still. Good thing you backed it up. Ethan tapped his jacket pocket. 2 copies, one with you, one with me. She exhaled, tension easing from her shoulders. Greg's desperate now. He wouldn't risk sending men with guns unless he knew we were close to taking him down. He's afraid, Ethan said. And when men like him get afraid, they make mistakes. Jennifer turned to look at him. So, what's next? We can't go to the FBI. Not while his people are still inside. Ethan rubbed his chin, thinking. We go around them. You said you trust Agent Klein with my life, Jennifer replied. But he's off the grid these days. Lives upstate, somewhere quiet. Ethan nodded. Then that's where we go. He's our only shot at bringing Greg down legally. Jennifer glanced back at Loretta and Anna. You sure they're up for that kind of trip? Ethan smiled faintly. Loretta's tougher than she looks, and Anna. He glanced at the sleeping girl. Anna's the reason I'm still breathing. I'm not leaving her behind. They hit the road before sunrise, the city fading into the distance. Ethan drove while Jennifer made calls, trying to reach Klein. Loretta hummed softly in the back seat, trying to soothe Anna when she stirred. Hours later, they stopped at a diner off the highway, the kind with chipped booths, black coffee, and a jukebox that hadn't worked in years. Loretta ordered pancakes for Anna and oatmeal for herself. Jennifer pulled out her laptop again, scanning headlines. Greg's already spinning this, she said grimly. A statement from his office says he's cooperating with authorities to recover stolen proprietary materials. He's painting you as the thief. Ethan gave a dry laugh. He's consistent. I'll give him that. Anna, half asleep over her pancakes, looked up. "Mr. E, are we the good guys?" Ethan's heart softened. "Yeah, sweetheart. We're the good guys." "Then why are we hiding?" she asked. He hesitated. "Because sometimes good people have to be quiet until the truth is ready to speak." Anna nodded solemnly as if that made perfect sense. "Mama used to say lies sound loud 'cause they're scared of the truth." Loretta smiled, her eyes glistening. That child's got her mama's wisdom. After breakfast, they filled the car with gas and headed north. The landscape shifted from cityscape to forest, the air turning crisp and cold. Jennifer finally got through to Klein around noon. "Harold," she said into the phone, her voice tight with relief. "It's Jen Price. I need your help, and I'm not calling for a story this time." Ethan could hear the gruff voice on the other end. "If this is about Walker, I already know he's innocent. I tried to tell the Bureau that a year ago." Jennifer blinked. "Then you know about Greg Sanders?" "More than I'd like. He's got people everywhere, even inside the Bureau's Financial Crimes Unit. You two have to be careful." "We've got proof," Jennifer said. "Files, emails, even a video confession from Janelle Johnson before she died. We just need someone who can move it safely through the system." There was a long pause, then, "Come to my cabin in Catskill County off Route 212. Don't bring your phones. They're compromised." The line went dead. Ethan exchanged a glance with Jennifer. "He sounds paranoid." "He has reason to be," she replied. As the day faded, they reached the foothills of the Catskills. The cabin was hidden in the woods, surrounded by pines and the hum of cicadas. A single light burned inside. Klein answered the door in a flannel shirt and jeans, his gray beard trimmed short, his eyes sharp and weary. "You made it," he said. "Get inside before someone sees you." They entered cautiously. The place smelled of coffee and wood smoke. Files and old case folders were stacked on the dining table. Klein gestured for them to sit. "Let me see what you've got," he said. Jennifer handed him her flash drive. Klein plugged it into an old laptop, scrolling through the files with practiced speed. "Good Lord," he muttered. "This is worse than I thought. Offshore accounts, shell companies, even fake charities. He's been bleeding investors dry for years." Ethan leaned forward. "Can we take him down?" Klein's jaw tightened. "Yes, but it won't be easy. You're dealing with a man who's bribed judges, silenced witnesses, and owns half the politicians in this state. We'll need to leak parts of this first, carefully, to turn public pressure against him." Jennifer nodded. "I can write the story, but Greg will come for us before it runs." Klein looked at Ethan. "Then you'd better be ready for that." As night fell, Anna explored the cabin with Loretta, giggling softly as she found an old rocking chair by the fireplace. Ethan stood by the window, watching the tree leaves sway in the wind. "He won't stop," he said quietly. "Greg's not just protecting his empire. He's protecting his ego." Klein joined him. "Then hit him where it hurts. Take his pride, not just his money." Ethan turned to him. "How?" "Expose the hypocrisy. The man who built his fortune preaching integrity while stealing from everyone who trusted him. You show the world who he really is." Jennifer added, "We can do that, but we'll need a digital trail, something that connects the fraud directly to him, not just through Janelle's files." Ethan frowned. "He used my credentials for years. If there's one copy of those digital signatures left on a government archive, we can prove it was forged." Klein nodded slowly. "Then that's where we go next, Washington. The SEC servers keep transactional archives no one can delete. But it's dangerous. You'll need to sneak in and copy the data yourself." Loretta overheard from the table. "You mean break into a government building?" Klein smirked. "Not break in, ma'am. Borrow access." Ethan sighed. "So it's a heist now?" Jennifer grinned faintly. "A righteous one." Anna tugged on Ethan's sleeve. Does this mean you're going to be a spy? Ethan chuckled. Something like that. Loretta crossed her arms. Well, if y'all are going to do something that crazy, you'd better not do it on an empty stomach. She started rummaging through Klein's cabinets. As she cooked, the room filled with the smell of frying bacon and cornbread. It felt strangely peaceful, a stolen moment of normal life before the next storm. When Anna was finally asleep in the rocking chair, Ethan stood by the fire, watching the flames dance. Jennifer joined him quietly. You realize this is suicide, right? She said softly. Ethan smiled, eyes distant. It's redemption. She looked at him for a long moment, then said, Janelle would be proud. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the faint echo of a coming reckoning. Miles away in a penthouse overlooking Manhattan, Greg Sanders poured another drink. Pierce stood before him, arm in a sling from their last encounter. You failed, Greg said coldly. Pierce swallowed. He threw it in the river. The drive's gone. Greg sneered. You really think Walker would destroy the only proof he had? No, he's too careful. He has copies. Find them. He turned to the window, watching lightning flash far to the north toward the mountains. Find them, he repeated softly. And when you do, bring me the girl. The next morning dawned cold and pale over the Catskills. Mist hung low between the trees, blurring the outline of the cabin. Inside, Ethan stood at the kitchen sink, staring at his reflection in the window. His face looked older, harder, more alive than it had in months. He'd lost everything, yet somehow gained a reason to fight again. Behind him, Loretta was humming softly while packing sandwiches into a paper bag. You sure you don't want to eat first? She asked. Ethan shook his head. Can't. My stomach's tied in knots. Jennifer entered the room, her hair pulled back, a determined look in her eyes. Klein's prepping the gear, she said. We'll need to leave in 10 minutes. Loretta raised an eyebrow. Gear? Lord have mercy. You sound like you're going to war. Jennifer managed a thin smile. In a way, we are. Anna came padding into the room, still in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Mr. E, where are you going? Ethan crouched down, forcing a smile. Just a little trip, sweetheart. Something important. She frowned. You always say that when you mean dangerous. Loretta sighed. Child's too sharp for her own good. Ethan brushed a curl from Anna's forehead. You're going to stay here with Miss Loretta and help her make sure Pastor Klein doesn't burn his own coffee again, okay? Anna pouted, but nodded. Okay. But you promise you'll come back? He hesitated. I promise I'll try my best. She held up her pinky. Mama said promises only count when you mean them. Ethan linked his pinky with hers. Then I mean it. Klein appeared at the door holding 2 backpacks. We need to move. The longer we wait, the easier it'll be for them to find us. Ethan kissed the top of Anna's head. Be good, kid. Bring back the truth, she whispered. He blinked, surprised. Where did you hear that? Mama used to say it, Anna replied, her small voice steady. Truth is like light. It don't hide forever. Ethan's throat tightened. She was right. They left the cabin and headed toward a beat-up truck parked at the edge of the clearing. The drive south was quiet. The highway stretched long and empty, the hum of the tires filling the silence between them. Jennifer finally spoke. You know this could land us in prison. Ethan nodded. If we're lucky. Klein kept his eyes on the road. There's an old contact at the SEC archives, a night shift clerk named Ramos. He owes me a favor from a case years ago. If we time it right, we can access the servers before anyone knows we were there. Jennifer frowned. And if Ramos says no? Klein smirked. Then we remind him that doing the right thing feels better than running scared. They reached Washington, D.C. just after dusk. The city glittered with bureaucratic calm, hiding the rot beneath. The SEC building loomed ahead, tall, sterile, and surrounded by cameras. Klein parked in an alley 2 blocks away. "We'll go in through the parking garage," he said. "Less foot traffic. Ethan, you and I handle access. Jennifer, you keep watch and monitor comms." "Got it," she said, checking her phone. "I'll flag any heat signatures from nearby patrols." Inside the building, the air was heavy with the smell of disinfectant and faint ozone. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Klein swiped a borrowed badge and the door clicked open. "Still works," he muttered. "Guess old favors die hard." They moved quickly down the hallway. The server room was cold, lined with humming towers of machines. Ethan sat at a terminal while Klein plugged in a portable drive. "Okay," Klein said. "Find anything with Sanders' signature authorization code, GS 1978. Ethan's fingers flew across the keyboard. Data scrolled past, numbers, emails, digital stamps. "Got it," he said. "Here, 3 years of forged authorizations. He used my login, my encryption key." Klein whistled low. "This is the smoking gun." "Copy everything," Ethan said. They waited as files transferred gigabytes of evidence that could bury Greg Sanders for good. The minutes crawled by. Ethan's nerves were electric. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice. Jennifer's voice came through the earpiece. "Urgent. Ethan, you've got company. 2 vehicles just pulled into the garage. No plates. Armed." Klein cursed under his breath. "He found us." Ethan yanked the drive free. "We've got what we need. Back exit now." They sprinted down the corridor, alarms beginning to blare. Jennifer met them at the stairwell, her eyes wide. "They're cutting off the east wing. We've got about 30 seconds before they're here." "Rooftop," Klein said. "Emergency exit leads to an adjacent building." They ran, boots slapping the tile. Gunfire echoed somewhere below. Ethan's lungs burned, but he didn't stop. When they burst through the rooftop door, rain was falling again, a steady drizzle under the orange city lights. Jennifer scanned the edge. "There's a maintenance bridge between buildings." They dashed across, wind whipping their faces. Halfway over, a shout rang out behind them. "Pierce!" He stepped into the doorway, gun raised. Ethan turned, adrenaline surging. "Go," he shouted to Jennifer and Klein. "I'll hold him off." Jennifer froze. "Ethan, go," he barked. Pierce fired. The bullet tore past Ethan's shoulder, grazing flesh. He ducked behind a vent and shouted, "You really don't give up, do you?" Pierce's voice carried across the rain. "Neither do you. But you're out of luck, Walker. My boss wants the drive and the girl." Ethan's blood ran cold. "You leave her out of this." Pierce smirked, stepping closer. "Too late for that. We already know where she is." Ethan didn't think. He launched himself forward, slamming into Pierce with all his strength. The gun skidded across the roof. They grappled, slipping in the rain. Below, Jennifer and Klein reached the far building. Jennifer turned back just as Ethan threw a punch that sent Pierce reeling, but then Pierce caught him with an elbow, knocking him to the ground. "Ethan," Jennifer screamed. Pierce grabbed his gun again, aiming it point blank. "Say goodbye, hero." Before he could pull the trigger, Ethan swung a metal rod, knocking the weapon from his hand. The gun slid across the slick roof and straight off the edge. Pierce lunged, but his foot slipped. For a second, he hung on the railing, fingers clutching wet metal. "Help me!" Pierce gasped. Ethan hesitated. Every instinct screamed to let go, to end it here. But Anna's voice echoed in his mind. "Mama said even when people do bad things, we don't have to become bad, too." Porch, pinned to the door was a small white envelope. He opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single photo, Anna, taken from a distance, playing outside the cabin. On the back, scrawled in red ink, were 3 words, "You're not done." The cabin had never felt smaller. Outside, the forest stood deathly still under a shroud of fog. The silence so complete it pressed against the windows like another layer of glass. Inside, every face was drawn tight with fear. The photo lay on the table between them, its edges damp from Ethan's shaking hands. Anna was in the picture, smiling, completely unaware it had been taken. Jennifer stared at it, jaw clenched. "They know exactly where we are." Loretta muttered a prayer under her breath. "Lord, have mercy." Klein grabbed the photo, inspecting the back. "This ink, it's fresh. Someone was here within the last few hours." Ethan rose from his chair. "Then we need to move, tonight." "No," Klein snapped. "That's exactly what they want. Panic makes mistakes. We don't move until I clear the perimeter." He walked to the window, gun in hand, scanning the tree line with the calm precision of a man who'd done this before. Anna sat beside Ethan, holding her stuffed rabbit close. "Mr. E," she whispered. "Why do they want to hurt us?" Ethan crouched beside her, forcing his voice to stay steady. "They don't want to hurt you, Anna. They just want to scare us." "But you look scared," she said softly. He managed a weak smile. "That's because I'm human. But being scared doesn't mean we stop doing what's right." Jennifer leaned against the wall, rubbing her temples. "Ethan, even if we release the data, Greg can spin it. He'll call it fabricated, doctored. We need something bigger, something that hits him in real time where he can't hide behind lawyers." Klein turned from the window. "He's holding a fundraising gala next week in D.C. for his new Integrity Initiative. Every major investor, senator, and media outlet will be there." Ethan looked up sharply. "You're saying we expose him in front of the whole world?" Jennifer nodded. "Exactly. We leak the truth live. Documents, video, proof, everything." Loretta crossed her arms. "You're talking about walking straight into the lion's den." Ethan met her eyes. "Then it's time we stopped running." For the next 2 days, they planned in silence. Klein set up a secure network in the cabin, rerouting data through old encryption channels. Jennifer compiled the files into a digital presentation. Ethan worked on timing, how to get inside, how to stay alive long enough to speak. Anna stayed close to him, sensing the tension. One evening, as he sat by the fireplace reviewing Greg's photos with Pierce, she came and placed something in his lap, a small folded paper heart. "What's this?" he asked. "So you don't forget to be brave," she said simply. Ethan swallowed hard. "You keep doing this, you're going to make me cry." She smiled. "Then I'm doing it right." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He stood outside the cabin, listening to the wind whisper through the pines. The stars were faint, drowned by the haze. He thought about how far he'd fallen and how much he still had to lose. Behind him, Klein stepped onto the porch. "You know," the old agent said quietly, "the men I've seen who survive this kind of war, they don't do it because they're fearless. They do it because something matters more than the fear." Ethan stared into the darkness. "For me, that's her." Klein nodded. "Then hang on to that. It's your armor." The following morning, Jennifer's contact at the Chronicle confirmed that Greg's gala would be televised nationwide. It was to be held at the Corvina Hotel, a glass palace of wealth and ego. Jennifer loaded her laptop. "We'll need to bypass the hotel's network and upload the files through a live media feed. Once it hits the broadcast servers, Greg can't stop it." Ethan nodded. "Then that's where we finish this." But before they could move, Klein's phone buzzed, a secured number flashing. He frowned. "It's Pierce." Ethan stiffened. "He's calling." "You?" Klein answered cautiously. "This is Klein." Pierce's voice was low, urgent. "You need to listen. I'm done with Sanders. He's crossed a line. He's not just after Walker anymore. He's got men watching the kid." Ethan's blood turned to ice. "Where?" "I don't know. He's paranoid now. Keeps everything off the books. But I heard him talking to a man named Dwyer, mercenary type. If he moves, it'll be fast. Jennifer leaned close to the speaker. Why are you helping us, Pierce? Pierce hesitated. Because I got a daughter, too. I know what it means when someone threatens your kid. Then the line went dead. Loretta's voice trembled. Lord, help us. They're coming for that child. Ethan grabbed his jacket. Then I'm ending this before he gets the chance. Jennifer stepped in front of him. Ethan, you can't just walk into his building alone. I'm not waiting for another photo, he said fiercely. He's not going to touch her again. Klein held up a hand. We'll go together. But if we're doing this, we do it smart. Tonight, we plant the groundwork. Tomorrow, we end it. That evening, under cover of darkness, they drove toward Manhattan. The city rose like steel fire ahead of them, indifferent and glittering. Greg's office tower loomed over the skyline, his empire glowing from the top floors like a crown. They parked several blocks away. Klein handed Ethan an earpiece. We'll split up. Jennifer will link into the building's internal network from a nearby relay. You and I will get inside. Plant the transmitter near his private suite. Jennifer adjusted her hood. Once I trigger the upload, the whole truth goes live, his accounts, forged documents, Janelle's confession, all of it. Ethan took a deep breath. Let's finish this. Inside the lobby, everything gleamed, marble floors, glass walls, and silent guards in suits. Ethan kept his head down, following Klein toward the service elevator. The guard barely looked up. A quick badge swipe, and they were in. The elevator doors closed. The hum of motion filled the silence. Klein turned to him. If something goes wrong, don't play hero. You get out. Find the girl. Ethan nodded. We both get out. The doors opened onto the top floor, a sleek, dimly lit hallway lined with art worth more than most houses. They moved quickly toward Greg's office. Then a voice broke the silence. Going somewhere, gentlemen? Greg Sanders stepped out of the shadows, flanked by two guards. His expression was calm, almost amused. You didn't think I'd let you waltz in here again, did you? Klein reached for his gun, but one of the guards had already drawn his. Greg smiled coldly. Put it down, Harold. You're too old for this. Ethan stepped forward. This ends tonight, Greg. Greg chuckled. Oh, I agree. But not the way you think. He nodded toward his phone. You see, I've been watching your little road trip, the mountains, the river, that charming cabin. He turned the screen so Ethan could see a live feed, Anna asleep on the couch, a red dot flickering on the window behind her. Ethan's world tilted. You son of a careful, Greg said softly. That dot's a scope. One wrong move, and the girl you care about so much takes the price for your righteousness. Jennifer's voice crackled through the earpiece. Ethan, what's happening? I just lost the feed. Greg smiled wider. You should listen to her. She's a fine journalist. Shame she'll never get to publish this story. Klein whispered, he's bluffing. He can't risk. Greg turned toward him. You still don't get it. I don't care about risk anymore. I care about control. Ethan's mind raced. Every instinct screamed for him to act, but if he did, Anna could die. Greg stepped closer, his voice low and venomous. You should have jumped, Walker. Would have saved us both a lot of trouble. Ethan looked into his eyes and saw nothing human left. Then, slowly, deliberately, he raised his hands. Okay, he said. You win, for now. Greg smirked, unaware that Ethan's smartwatch was already sending a silent signal, Jennifer's emergency trigger. In the cabin. Miles away, the red dot on the window blinked out. Klein's hidden defense system had activated the decoy protocol, blinding the camera feed. Back in the tower, the lights flickered as Jennifer hacked the internal grid. Greg frowned. Every screen in his office came to life. The video of Janelle Johnson appeared, her dying confession filling the room. If anyone finds this, please protect my daughter and clear Marcus Ethan Walker's name. Greg's smirk vanished. Klein whispered, "There's your light, boy." Sirens wailed outside. Greg turned toward the window, realization dawning too late. The explosion of sound hit like thunder, alarms blaring, shouts echoing through the marble corridors. Klein reacted first. He tackled the nearest guard before the man could raise his weapon. The gun fired into the ceiling, sprinkling glass dust over the room. Ethan lunged for the second guard, landing a solid punch to his jaw. The man went down, groaning. Greg stumbled backward, his phone clattering to the floor. "You think this will save you?" he hissed. "You think the truth matters?" Ethan grabbed him by the collar, fury burning behind his eyes. "It always does." Greg smirked despite the blood on his lip. "You're still the idealist. The world doesn't care about truth. It only cares about power. And I still have both." Before Ethan could answer, Klein shouted, "We need to move. SWAT inbound, and not all of them are ours." Jennifer's voice came through Ethan's earpiece, strained. "Ethan, I've got the live feed running across every major outlet, but Greg's people are tracing my location. I've got maybe 10 minutes before they cut me off." "Get out of there, Jen," Ethan said, hauling Greg toward the elevator. "Now." "I'll cover you as long as I can," she replied. Klein slammed his fist against the elevator button. "It's locked." Greg laughed hoarsely. "You didn't think I'd let you walk out so easily." Ethan spun him toward the window. "Fine, we'll make our own exit." He smashed a chair through the glass. The wind howled, whipping rain inside. Far below, the city pulsed with sirens and flashing lights. "You're insane," Greg spat. Ethan turned. "No, I'm done being afraid." He nodded toward Klein. "Rope." Klein tossed him a climbing cable from his pack. Old habits die hard. They anchored it to a steel beam and clipped in. Greg's face twisted with panic. "You'll never make it down alive." Ethan stared at him. "Maybe not, but I'll make sure you do." He shoved Greg toward the window. The rain plastered his suit to his body. The night below looked endless. One floor beneath them, security burst through the stairwell. Bullets shattered the remaining glass. Klein returned fire, forcing them back. "Go, go, go," he shouted. Ethan clipped Greg's harness and rappelled down first, his muscles screaming. Glass cut into his hands. Below, a dozen police cars had arrived, but it was impossible to tell who was friend or foe. Halfway down, Greg lost his footing. He swung wildly, screaming. "Walker, pull me up." Ethan braced himself, tightening the rope. "You're going to face justice, Greg. Not death." When they finally hit the ground, floodlights blinded them. "Hands where we can see them," an agent barked. Klein descended last, bleeding from a gash on his arm. "Easy," he shouted. "We're with the Bureau Agent Harold Klein, retired, badge number 2046. Sanders is your man." One of the agents, a woman with dark hair tied back, stepped forward. "Agent Torres, FBI. We've been tracking the feed. The confession went viral. We have everything we need." Greg collapsed to his knees, defeated. "You can't prove those files are real," he muttered. Torres held up a tablet. "We can, and we did. The encryption came directly from SEC servers. Your login, your timestamps." She signaled to her men. "Take him." As they cuffed Greg, Ethan finally allowed himself to breathe. The rain mixed with sweat on his face, the city lights blurring around him. It was over, or so he thought. Jennifer's voice crackled faintly in his earpiece, strained. "Ethan, they found me." His heart stopped. "What?" Static hissed. Then her voice, weaker, 2 men outside the cafe. "I think they're after Anna." "Jennifer," Ethan shouted, but the line went dead. Torres caught the change in his expression. What happened? They're going after the girl. Torres barked orders. Teams 3 and 4, trace that call, now. Ethan turned to Klein. We need to move. Torres grabbed his arm. Walker, listen to me. Let us handle it. He shook her off. She's a child. You think I'm going to sit here while Klein cut him off? Torres, he's right. We've got to go now. Torres hesitated, then nodded. Fine. I'll coordinate backup. Minutes later, Ethan and Klein were back in the truck, tires screeching as they tore through the wet streets. Ethan's knuckles were white on the wheel. This is it. The building loomed dark and silent, its broken windows staring like hollow eyes. Rain puddled in the cracked pavement. This is it, Ethan said. The smell of oil and decay filled the air. Water dripped from the ceiling. They moved up the stairs quietly, step by step. From the second-floor landing, Ethan saw her, Anna tied to a chair but unharmed, wide-eyed and trembling. Two men stood nearby, their attention fixed on the radio. Ethan whispered, "On 3. Klein nodded. 1, 2, before they could say 3, a gunshot cracked. The bullet hit the wall inches from Ethan's head. Pierce stepped out from the shadows, gun raised. You never learn, Walker. Ethan ducked behind a beam, returning fire. Klein flanked right, hitting one of the guards in the leg. Chaos erupted. Anna screamed, "Mr. E." That sound fueled him like nothing else. Ethan lunged forward, tackling Pierce to the ground. The gun skittered away. They struggled, fists and rage colliding. You think you can save her? Pierce snarled. You think you can change what's coming? Ethan slammed his fist into Pierce's jaw. I already did. Pierce spat blood and reached for a knife. But before he could strike, a shot rang out. He froze, eyes wide, then fell. Behind him, Klein lowered his gun, breathing hard. You're welcome. Ethan scrambled to Anna, cutting the ropes. She threw her arms around him, sobbing. I knew you'd come. He hugged her tightly. I promised, didn't I? Outside, the wail of sirens filled the night. FBI, local police, the cavalry finally arriving. Klein placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. It's over, son. But as Ethan carried Anna outside into the rain, he looked up at the night sky and couldn't shake the feeling that something darker still waited beyond the horizon. Far away in a sterile government office, a man in a gray suit watched the live news broadcast of Greg Sanders' arrest. He turned off the television, picked up his phone, and said calmly, Walker just destroyed our investment. Then we destroy him. The rain had washed the worst of the night away, but it couldn't cleanse the feeling that something larger had shifted under Ethan's feet. Standing beneath the flashing lights, Anna clung to him like a lifeline. Loretta wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, eyes rimmed red from crying. Agents moved around them with quiet efficiency. Agent Torres guided them to a van and handed Ethan a folder. We'll get you statements, medical attention for that arm, and temporary protective custody for the child while we sort this out. She met his eyes. You did the right thing, Mr. Walker. You brought us the proof. He opened the folder and skimmed the first page. Charges, witness lists, preliminary indictments. His name was finally printed under a note, status, victim/cooperating witness. It should have been enough. He should have felt lighter. Instead, his fingers tightened around the edge of the paper. Is Anna safe now? He asked. For now, Torres said. We've placed her with a certified foster relative in the area while we keep a watch. You'll have supervised visits. Her voice softened. We'll do everything we can to keep her safe. Ethan nodded. He wanted to argue, to say he would not leave her side, but his voice was raw. Thank you, he managed. The cameras followed him as he stepped away from the chaos. A reporter shouted a question about motive. Another asked whether he would reclaim his company. Ethan answered as best he could, half-truths that would feed the morning cycles. He felt like an actor on a stage built of other people's assumptions. That evening, back at the makeshift safe house the bureau provided, Ethan sat across from Jennifer and Klein, both exhausted but alert. Jennifer scrolled through comment threads on her phone, some supportive, most ecstatic that the truth had surfaced, a dangerous few promising retribution. Klein poured coffee and handed Ethan a paper cup. "You put him on his knees," he said simply. "Good men do things like that, then take the hits later." Ethan set the cup down. "This was never about me." Jennifer met his gaze. "Janelle's story changed everything. People care now because it's not only about a man's fall from grace. It's about the people he hurt to get where he is." Klein's phone buzzed. He answered, listened for a moment, then hung up. That was Torres. "She wants us to come in for interviews tomorrow. The Justice Department will be involving a special counsel." He folded his hands like a deck of worn cards. "But be prepared. This won't be tidy. Greg's connections run deep. You'll be asked tough questions. Politicians will posture. The press will want closure. That's when people with power move to protect themselves." Ethan felt the old instincts, those boardroom reflexes that had dictated his life, rise like a remembered language. He had built walls with contracts and PR teams. Now those walls were being chipped away in real time. He wondered, privately and with a small lurch of dread, who would move next to shield themselves. The following morning, Ethan drove to the federal building under a low, hard sun. He felt exposed, like a man whose inner rooms had been left open. Agents shepherded him into a sterile conference room. The questions began gentle, then sharpened. They wanted timelines, dates, who knew what and when. Klein sat beside him, a steady presence. Jennifer took notes and provided context when needed. As the interviews progressed, a pattern emerged. Greg had indeed cultivated ties, donations to campaigns, quiet loans to influential foundations. Favors returned with favors. Ethan's stomach turned. The fraud had been a web, and Greg was not the spider alone. Higher points of the web hovered uncomfortably close to elected offices and major donors. Names he once led offered statements of support for the company's employees, but their faces were too careful to be heartfelt. A late-night pundit asked on air whether Ethan's actions had crossed a line by broadcasting documents through a journalist rather than following legal channels. Ethan listened, steeled himself, and remembered Anna's folded paper heart on his dashboard. One morning, as he arrived at the federal building, Agent Torres intercepted him with a folder and an apology in her eyes. "We traced a transaction," she said. "A shell company linked to Greg made a donation to a non-profit affiliated with a member of Congress. We have the paper trail." She held the folder out to show him names and dates. "This goes far higher than we expected." Ethan swallowed. "Will they indict?" Torres met his stare. "We don't know yet. This is where things get ugly. But you did the right thing bringing this to light. Now we need to be relentless." As he walked into the building, Ethan felt the old city's weight, but also something steadier under his feet. A new purpose born of loss and hardened by responsibility. He had been a man who measured worth in market values in quarterly reports. Now he measured it in nights spent guarding a sleeping child, and in the small, tireless acts of people who'd kept a neighborhood alive through decades of neglect. He would keep pushing. He would weather the political storms, the legal slow rolling, the whispered threats. He had something no amount of money could buy now: accountability and a child who believed in him. Far from the courthouse, in a private office with walls insulated from the world's noise, men in tailored suits watched the story unfold and calculated their next moves. The web reached further than Ethan had imagined, but every web has strands that can be snapped. Ethan felt that in his bones. He tightened his grip on the folder in his hand and walked into the hearing room, ready to be part of the pressure that he hoped would finally pull the rotten heart of this scheme into the light. The first hearings were chaos wrapped in ceremony. Cameras lined the corridors of the federal courthouse. Reporters shouted Ethan's name, and senators walked through polished marble halls, rehearsing outrage for the evening news. It had only been 2 weeks since Greg Sanders' arrest, But already Washington had transformed the scandal into political theater. Ethan stood at the edge of it all, feeling both central and invisible. Inside, the committee chamber buzzed. Men and women in tailored suits whispered into phones, aides shuffled stacks of documents. Ethan took his seat beside Agent Torres and Jennifer. Klein sat in the gallery, arms crossed, watching like a hawk. Senator Caldwell, gray-haired and practiced in the art of sympathy, leaned toward the microphone. "Mr. Walker," he began. "We understand that you were misrepresented, defrauded, and nearly destroyed by Mr. Sanders' actions. We appreciate your cooperation, but for the record, did you or did you not sign any financial authorization during your tenure at Northbridge Investments that could have facilitated these transfers?" Ethan spoke steadily. "No, Senator. Any signatures attached to those transactions were digitally forged. The forensic evidence confirms that." Caldwell nodded gravely, pretending to absorb the answer. "And yet," he continued, "you were CEO during this period. Is it possible that negligence on your part allowed these crimes to occur?" Jennifer stiffened. Torres's jaw tightened. Ethan inhaled slowly. "Senator, I accept responsibility for the environment Greg operated in. I trusted him. That was my failure. But negligence and conspiracy are not the same thing. I didn't profit from this. I lost everything." A ripple passed through the room, some sympathetic, some skeptical. Caldwell shifted in his chair. "Losses are regrettable, Mr. Walker. But public confidence demands accountability. Our constituents deserve to know if this was the act of one criminal or the symptom of systemic greed." Ethan met his gaze. "With respect, Senator, that's exactly what I'm trying to expose. This wasn't one man's crime. It was a culture of entitlement protected by influence. Greg Sanders was just the face of it." That answer hung in the air like the toll of a bell. Cameras clicked. Someone coughed. After the session ended, Jennifer caught up with Ethan in the hallway. "You just made enemies," she said. "Maybe," Ethan replied. "But I told the truth." "Truth," she muttered. "Doesn't pay campaign bills." That night, they reconvened at the safe house. Loretta had cooked a pot of stew that filled the air with warmth and spice. Anna sat at the table coloring, humming softly to herself. For the first time in weeks, Ethan smiled. "How'd the big talk go?" Loretta asked. Ethan shrugged. They listened, pretended to at least, but the room was thick with people who'd rather keep things quiet. Loretta ladled stew into bowls. "That's always how it starts. Big folks don't want trouble till the trouble finds them." Anna looked up. "Are the bad guys gone now?" Ethan hesitated. "Some are," he said gently. "But some are still hiding." Anna nodded as if that was just part of life. "Then we keep going. That's what Mama said when we were scared." Jennifer watched the exchange, her expression softening. "She's right," she said. "We keep going." Later, they reconvened the plans. The evening news was already dissecting the hearings. A panel of commentators debated whether Ethan Walker was a whistleblower or a convenient distraction. One pundit, with a smirk that made Ethan's stomach twist, suggested he had engineered the scandal to rebuild his brand. Klein switched it off. "They'll spin it every which way. Doesn't change the facts." Ethan leaned back. "Sometimes it feels like the facts don't matter anymore." Jennifer closed her laptop. "That's why we make them matter. If they bury this story in politics, we'll take it to the people." Klein rubbed his beard thoughtfully. "There's someone who might help with that. An old friend of mine from my bureau days, Ellis Parker. He runs a small investigative foundation now. Independent funding, hates corruption more than he loves breathing. If anyone can keep this story alive without political interference, it's him." Ethan looked intrigued. "Would he even take the meeting?" Klein smiled faintly. "He owes me a favor. He'll take it." The next morning, they drove to a brick office building near Arlington. Inside, Ellis Parker was waiting. He was in his 60s, tall and wiry, with the look of a man who'd seen too much and regretted none of it. "Klein," he said, shaking hands firmly. "You don't show up unless someone's bleeding or righteous." "Sometimes both." Klein grinned. "Both this time?" Ethan introduced himself, and Ellis gave him a long, assessing look. "You're the one who burned down a billionaire's empire on live television." "I didn't burn it down," Ethan replied. "It was already burning. I just opened the windows." Ellis laughed, a low approving sound. "Good answer. Let's see if you've got the stomach for what comes next." He led them into a back room cluttered with files and old headlines. "The fallout from your case is bigger than you think," he said, spreading documents across the table. Sanders wasn't acting alone. He was part of a network of lobbyists, offshore trusts, political financiers. They used tech firms like yours to launder money through clean investments. You were the perfect scapegoat because you had visibility. Ethan felt a slow chill creep down his spine. "You're saying there's more?" "I'm saying this is only one head of a hydra," Ellis replied. "We've traced connections to federal contracts, infrastructure deals, even charity foundations that don't exist. The deeper we dig, the more rot we find." Jennifer exhaled. "How do we fight something that big?" Ellis looked at her. "You don't fight it. You expose it. Piece by piece. Sunlight's the only disinfectant we've got." For the first time in days, Ethan felt the faint flicker of purpose rather than fear. He looked at Jennifer, then at Klein. "Then let's get to work." Over the next week, the group transformed the safe house into a command center. Ellis's team of data analysts cross-referenced files from the Sanders case with corporate records and campaign donations. Patterns began to form, money flowing like a river beneath the surface of respectable names. At night, Ethan and Jennifer reviewed reports while Anna drew pictures on the floor beside them. Houses, stars, a man and a girl holding hands. She labeled them carefully, "Me and Mr. E." One evening as Jennifer worked, she looked at Ethan. "You realize this makes you a target again," she said quietly. He smiled, tired but resolute. "I've been a target since the day Greg stole my name. At least this time I get to choose the fight." Outside, sirens wailed faintly in the distance. The city slept, but for the first time, Ethan didn't feel powerless against it. He had allies. He had a mission. And somewhere deep in the machinery of corruption that had nearly destroyed him, something had started to crack. Far away, in a marble office lit by cold fluorescent light, a congressman received a phone call from an unknown number. The voice on the line was calm, measured, and unmistakably dangerous. "Walker's not done," it said. "He's digging again." A pause, then, "Handle it quietly." The rain came again, soft but relentless, drumming against the windows of the safe house as if reminding everyone inside that peace was temporary. It had been 10 days since Ellis Parker joined them, and already the place hummed with tension and quiet purpose. Stacks of papers, maps, and flash drives covered every flat surface. Coffee mugs multiplied like nervous habits. Ethan stood before a whiteboard covered in names and red strings. "We have one goal," he said, his voice steady but sharp. "Expose the structure before they erase it. Every account, every intermediary, every politician who touched Greg's network." Ellis nodded, arms crossed. "We'll feed the information in stages. Leak a piece here, a memo there. Make them scramble before we show our full hand. Panic makes people careless." Jennifer was already typing. Building a digital trail of evidence that pointed directly to the hidden beneficiaries of Greg Sanders' empire. "I can use encrypted networks to drop files anonymously to journalists we trust. But the minute the first leak hits, they'll start tracing us." Klein checked the perimeter cameras. "Then we make them think we're somewhere else." Reddick grinned, his deep voice cutting through the tension. "Already rigged a few surprises along the old highway. If they come sniffing, they'll be chasing ghosts." Anna sat quietly at a desk, drawing. Her picture showed a group of stick figures holding hands under a huge sun with the words "We win because we're good" scrawled in crayon. When she looked up, her face was serious. "Mr. E," she said softly. "Will they be mad when you tell the truth?" Ethan knelt beside her. "Yes, they'll be very mad." She thought for a moment, then asked, "Will they hurt you again?" He hesitated. "They might try, but you know what? The truth is stronger than they are." Anna nodded solemnly as if she understood the cost of courage. "Then I'll pray double." The first leak went out that evening. Jennifer sent a packet of documents to a handful of journalists under a secure signature, emails connecting a congressman to off-the-books donations routed through Greg's company. Within hours, the story broke. The headline screamed, "Sanders scandal expands, new evidence links political figures to offshore funds." The next morning, talk shows buzzed. Denials, deflections, and outrage filled the airwaves. Within hours, 2 committee members resigned, citing health reasons. Ellis smirked at the television. "That's panic." But the celebration was short-lived. Around noon, Reddick's motion sensors went off. "We've got company," he barked, checking the monitors. A black SUV approached from the access road. "Too polished, too deliberate." Klein cursed. "Feds or fakes? Plates are government," Reddick said. "But that doesn't mean they're ours." Torres's voice suddenly came through Ethan's phone, sharp and urgent. "Walker, where are you? Get out of there now. The bureau's been compromised. Someone leaked your location." Before Ethan could respond, the warehouse lights flickered. A spotlight swept across the wall. Loudspeakers crackled outside. "This is federal property. Step out with your hands up." Ellis's jaw tightened. "That's not Torres's team. They wouldn't announce it." "Back exit," Reddick said. They moved fast, grabbing drives and documents. Anna clutched her stuffed bear, wide-eyed but silent as Loretta carried her. Ethan scooped up the last of the hard drives and glanced back just as a concussion blast shook the front doors. "Go, go, go!" Reddick yelled, covering them as they dashed into the rain. They dove into the truck, tires spinning through the mud. Behind them, the warehouse erupted in flames, a blinding orange bloom that lit the trees. Jennifer looked back, face pale. "Everything's gone." Ethan shook his head. "Not everything." He held up the encrypted drive. "The real files are here. The rest were decoys." They drove for hours, switching routes, avoiding main roads. Finally, they stopped at an abandoned motel off I-83. Inside, the air smelled of dust and mildew, but it was shelter. Reddick checked the windows, muttering curses under his breath. Ellis was the first to speak. "They're using federal assets to do corporate cleanup. That means someone inside justice is compromised. Maybe multiple someones." Jennifer stared at the laptop she'd salvaged. "We can't send files now. They'll trace any signal we use." Ethan rubbed his temples. "Then we go old school. Hand delivery." "To who?" Klein asked. Ethan looked up, eyes clear. "To the one journalist they can't buy, Henry Walsh. Jennifer's father." Jennifer froze. "You can't. He's retired, and he hates politics." "He hates corruption more," Ethan said softly. "And if I'm right, he's the only one with the connections to publish this without it disappearing." Jennifer's shoulders dropped. "If we go to him, there's no turning back." "There's no turning back anyway," Ethan said. The next morning, they drove toward New York under heavy fog. Anna slept in the back seat, her small hand wrapped around Loretta's. Klein kept a watchful eye on the mirrors. Reddick followed in a separate car, a shotgun across his knees. When they reached Henry Walsh's cabin outside the Catskills, it was nearly dusk. Jennifer hesitated before knocking. The door opened before she could. Her father stood there, tall, silver-haired, skeptical. "Jenny," he said. "You only show up when the world's on fire." "It is," she answered. Henry's eyes flicked to Ethan. "You're the fallen billionaire, the bridge guy." "That's me," Ethan said. "But I'd rather be remembered for standing back up." Henry studied him for a moment, then sighed. "Come in before someone shoots you on my porch." Inside the cabin smelled of wood smoke and ink. Papers and old news clippings covered the walls, decades of stories that had exposed mayors, CEOs, even mob bosses. Jennifer placed the encrypted drive on the table. "This one's bigger than anything you've covered." Henry leaned over it, eyes narrowing. "Bigger how?" Ethan met his gaze. "It's not just about fraud. It's about how money bought silence, justice, and policy. If this dies in the shadows, we all lose." Henry was quiet for a long time. Then he reached for his old tape recorder. "Tell me everything," he said. Hours passed as Ethan, Jennifer, and Ellis recounted the web of corruption, the murder attempts, the government leaks. Henry took notes, asking sharp, surgical questions. When they finished, he exhaled slowly. "This will burn cities," he said. "You understand that?" Ethan nodded. "Then maybe it's time something burned." Henry smiled faintly. The kind of smile only old journalists carried. "You sound like me 30 years ago." He stood, walked to a dusty typewriter, and set a blank page in place. "All right, Mr. Walker. Let's make them sweat." Outside, night settled over the cabin. In the distance, headlights flickered on the far road. Reddick's radio crackled. Movement. 3 vehicles. No plates. Coming this way. Ethan's heart kicked once. He looked at Henry. "We're out of time." The headlights carved through the mist, slicing across the cabin walls like white blades. Ethan froze, listening to the crunch of tires on gravel. 3 vehicles, maybe more. The night was silent except for the rhythmic hiss of rain. Henry set his coffee down, eyes narrowing. "You brought hell to my doorstep." "Didn't mean to," Jennifer's voice shook, but her hands didn't. "Dad, they'll kill us before they let this story out." Henry looked at Ethan. "You got a way out?" Ethan glanced at the narrow hallway leading to the back door. "There's an old logging trail behind the ridge. If we get to the tree line, we can lose them in the forest." Reddick's voice roared through the static. "Go now." Ethan took one step forward, hands open. A single flash of light cut across the cabin, a flare arcing through the trees, and then the night exploded. Bullets tore through the windows, glass raining across the floor. Klein dug behind the couch, returning fire through the open door. Sparks jumped from the metal hinges. "Move, back door." Riek's voice roared through the static. "Go now." Ethan grabbed Anna from Loretta's arms from her arms, shielding her with his body as they crawled toward the rear exit. Jennifer followed close behind, clutching the encrypted drive against her chest. Henry covered them, firing 2 rounds before ducking behind a beam. "Keep low, Klein," shouted his voice. The back door splintered as Reddick burst through, covered in mud and smoke. "This way." They dashed into the darkness, the rain turning to a cold mist that clung to their skin. The forest ahead was alive with gunfire. Trees cracked under stray bullets, branches falling like broken bones. Up the ridge, Ethan shouted. "Go, go." Anna's small hand clung to his jacket. Her breath came in tiny gasps, but she didn't cry. Loretta pushed her forward, whispering prayers between breaths. Behind them, the cabin erupted in flames. The fire lit the forest in a sick orange glow, shadows leaping like ghosts. Klein and Reddick covered the retreat, firing short, precise bursts. One attacker fell, another stumbled, and vanished into the dark. Jennifer tripped on a root, falling hard. Ethan turned back, helping her up. "You okay?" She nodded, teeth chattering. "The drive, don't let it fall." "I won't." They reached a narrow ravine, the trail slick with mud. Reddick gestured toward an old storm drain beneath a collapsed bridge. "Down there. They won't track heat signatures under steel." They crawled into the tunnel, their breaths echoing off the damp walls. The smell of rust and wet earth filled the air. Henry limped behind them, holding his side. "Just like Beirut," he muttered darkly. When the last of them was inside, Klein pulled a metal grate over the entrance. "That'll buy us a few minutes." Ethan sat Anna down and wiped mud from her cheek. "You okay, sweetheart?" She nodded weakly. "Are we winning?" He managed a tired smile. "We're still standing. That's winning for now." Above them, faint voices shouted orders. The attackers were searching, their flashlights cutting through the trees. Jennifer leaned close to Ethan. "Dad's bleeding." Henry waved her off. "It's a graze. I've had worse hangovers." Ellis was the first to speak. "We can't stay here forever." Klein nodded. "Wait for Reddick's signal." Silence for 3 long seconds. Then the world outside shook with a thunderous explosion. Flames burst skyward, followed by shouts and confusion. "That was the van," Reddick panted through the radio. "They're scattering." Ethan looked at Jennifer. "Now's our chance." They crawled out of the tunnel, the smoke from the burning vehicle stinging their eyes. The attackers were retreating into the woods, disoriented. Henry pressed a bloody hand to his side, grimacing. "You get me out of this alive, I'll finish that article if it kills me." Ethan helped him toward the road. "Deal." They made it to the ridge just as sirens wailed in the distance. Real sirens this time. FBI vehicles tore down the highway, red and blue lights flashing through the mist. Torres led the convoy, stepping out with her gun drawn as soon as she saw them. "Jesus, Walker," she said, taking in the smoke behind them. "You just can't stay out of trouble, can you?" Ethan exhaled. "Not when trouble keeps finding me." Torres gestured to her agents. "Get these people to medics, and someone secure the drive before I lose another career." Jennifer handed it over reluctantly. "It's encrypted, but if they try to bury it, they won't," Torres interrupted. "This time, the press is already watching." "Walsh, your father's name still carries weight." Henry smiled weakly. "Guess I'm not obsolete after all." Torres turned to Ethan. "You did good, Walker. But this isn't over. Whoever funded this operation is still out there." Ethan looked back at the burning remains of the cabin, his expression hardening. "Then we find them." Anna tugged on his sleeve. "Mr. E, does this mean the bad people lost?" He knelt beside her, meeting her solemn gaze. "Not yet, Anna. But they're running out of places to hide." As dawn broke over the ridge, the first sunlight in days filtered through the smoke. It glinted off the wet leaves, off the spent shell casings scattered across the ground, and off the drive now in Torres's hands, the proof of everything. For a long moment, no one spoke. The fire burned behind them, consuming the lies that had nearly cost them their lives. Then Ethan said, quietly, "Let's finish what we started." The morning after the attack broke like a long sigh, gray, heavy, and quiet. The forest around the smoldering remains of Henry's cabin was wrapped in fog, as if the earth itself wanted to hide the scars left behind. By noon, the FBI had finished securing the area, and Torres gathered Ethan, Jennifer, and the others at a makeshift command tent beside the highway. "The drive's intact," she said, eyes scanning the small group. "Our tech team confirmed the data's authentic, hundreds of documents, bank statements, offshore transfers, congressional correspondences. It's enough to trigger federal indictments." Ellis nodded, though his face was grim. "Once this goes public, the system will eat its own, but don't expect it to do so quietly." Torres folded her arms. "That's why we're coordinating the release. We go live at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Multiple outlets, simultaneous coverage. By the time the first denial hits the airwaves, the truth will already be too wide to bury." Jennifer exhaled, the weight of months finally showing in her shoulders. "And Henry?" Torres glanced toward a nearby ambulance where paramedics were stitching up his wound. "He'll live." Stubborn old man refused hospital transport. Said, and I quote, "I've got a deadline to meet." Ethan smiled faintly. That sounds like him. Anna sat on a folding chair nearby, bundled in a blanket, sipping hot chocolate. When she saw Ethan, she waved. Did we win yet? Almost, kid, he said softly. Almost. That night, they stayed at a secure facility outside DC anonymous rooms, no names on the doors. Jennifer worked with Henry on finalizing the article while Torres coordinated with her director. Klein and Reddick stood guard outside, silent silhouettes in the corridor. Ethan couldn't sleep. He walked out onto the rooftop terrace where the lights of Washington shimmered beneath a low-cloud ceiling. The city looked serene from a distance, its marble monuments shining like symbols of virtue. But Ethan knew better now. He'd seen what those walls could hide. Footsteps approached. It was Henry, wrapped in a wool coat, moving slowly but with purpose. You should be proud, son, he said quietly. You dragged the rot into the sunlight. Ethan shook his head. I don't feel proud, just tired. Every time we push back against the darkness, it feels like it grows somewhere else. Henry chuckled softly. That's the curse of caring. But listen, truth doesn't erase evil. It just gives people a choice to see it. Most won't. But some will, and sometimes that's enough. Ethan looked at him. You really think this will change anything? The old journalist smiled, faint and weary. It'll change someone. That's where it starts. The next morning, at exactly 8 a.m., the world changed. Every major news outlet went live with synchronized headlines, massive political corruption scheme exposed. Networks flashed Ethan's image, then Greg Sanders, then a string of senators, lobbyists, and executives whose names had always been whispered but never confirmed. The leaks revealed the intricate machinery of greed that had stolen billions and bought silence across decades. Jennifer's article, co-written with Henry, hit first. The opening line read, "When the powerful believe they can buy truth, they forget that the powerless still bleed for it." Within hours, stock markets reeled. Congressional offices were raided. Protesters filled the steps of the Capitol. The name Ethan Walker trended across every platform, not as a fallen billionaire, but as the man who dared to pull back the curtain. In the secure room, the team watched in silence as the story unfolded. Torres's phone buzzed non-stop. Arrests are already underway, she reported. 3 senators, 2 corporate CFOs, and a Justice Department official. The president just announced an emergency ethics task force. Ethan leaned back. That sounds like progress. Klein nodded. That's what it looks like from this side of the fight. Henry looked at Jennifer, a rare pride in his eyes. You did good. Kid. Jennifer smiled faintly. So did you, Dad. Anna climbed onto the couch beside Ethan, holding his hand. So now we can go home. Ethan looked down at her, his voice gentle. Yes, Anna. We can go home. But even as he said it, his eyes drifted toward the window. The city outside was still buzzing with sirens, helicopters, and flashing lights. Change, he knew, came at a cost, and there were still men in suits somewhere in the world, watching, planning their revenge. That evening, as the team prepared to disband, Torres approached Ethan privately. You know this isn't really over, she said. We cut off a few heads, but the body's still breathing. You've made enemies with money and reach. Ethan nodded. I know, but I'm not running anymore. Torres smiled slightly. Good, because we could use someone like you. Ethan blinked. In the bureau? Not officially, she said. But I'm starting a task group, independent oversight. Real investigations. No politics. When you're ready, I'll call. He extended his hand. When you call, I'll answer. Later, after the others had turned in, Ethan found Jennifer on the terrace watching the city lights. You ever think about what comes next? He asked. She turned, wind brushing her hair across her face. I think about it every day. But for once, I'm not scared of it. He smiled softly. Neither am I. They stood in silence, watching the first dawn of a cleaner Washington, at least for now. The next week was chaos. Hearings reopened. Resignations flooded the news. Ethan testified once more, this time as a vindicated man. Cameras flashed, but instead of anger, the crowd carried a strange kind of respect. When it was over, he walked out into the bright afternoon sun and saw Anna waiting with Loretta on the courthouse steps. She ran toward him, arms wide, shouting his name. He lifted her into his arms, laughing for the first time in months. "We did it, kid. You were right." "About what?" she asked. "That we win because we're good." Anna grinned. "Told you so." Jennifer joined them, smiling. "You know, Ethan, most people would take a break after something like this." He looked up at the Capitol dome, glinting in the sunlight. "Breaks are for people who don't owe the world a little more light." Henry stepped out behind them, a fresh newspaper in his hand. The headline read, "Truth Wins, Walker Cleared as National Reform Begins." He handed it to Ethan. "You earned this one, son." Ethan studied the headline for a long moment, then folded it carefully and tucked it into Anna's backpack. "You keep that," he told her. "It's your story, too." As they walked down the courthouse steps together, the noise of the crowd faded behind them. The sun burned through the haze, sharp and golden, and the wind carried the smell of wet stone and spring. Ethan looked out at the city, his city, and felt something rare, fragile, and real, peace. He'd lost billions, status, and the life he once thought defined him. But he'd found something worth far more: truth, purpose, and a family forged in fire. And though he knew darkness never truly dies, he also knew what Anna had taught him that first night on the bridge, when everything seemed lost and a small voice still dared to believe in light. Their lives weren't just for them. Every act of courage, every kindness, every truth spoken in defiance, it all mattered. And as the sun rose over Washington, Ethan Walker finally understood. Wealth wasn't what you kept. It was what you gave. 6 months passed. The world had moved on, or at least pretended to. Washington gleamed in the spring light, its marble buildings polished and solemn, as if nothing dark had ever slithered through their halls. News anchors had found new stories to sell, and the Walker scandal, now a mandatory case study in ethics courses, was filed neatly under resolved. But Ethan knew better. Evil didn't end. It adapted. Second Chances Incorporated, the non-profit he'd founded with Ellis and Jennifer, had grown faster than anyone expected. They'd helped veterans find work, funded families, evicted by corporate foreclosures, and sponsored scholarships for kids from underprivileged communities. Anna's idea. She had started third grade, thriving, fearless, still carrying her sketchbook everywhere. Yet, beneath the good they built, Ethan felt a quiet hum of unfinished business. One afternoon, he sat in his glass-walled office overlooking the Potomac, reviewing new grant proposals. Outside, the city pulsed with routine. Inside, the air felt too still. Jennifer entered without knocking, her phone in hand, her face pale. "Ethan," she said, "you need to see this." He took the phone. The message on the encrypted app was short, anonymous, and unmistakably ominous. "You took one head. The body still lives. Meet me at the old Senate Hotel, room 412, midnight. Alone. A friend from inside." Ethan frowned. "Who sent this?" "Untraceable," Jennifer said. "But the phrasing, friend from inside, it sounds like Torres." Ethan leaned back. "Torres doesn't do cryptic. She'd call." "Then who?" Jennifer whispered. Ethan looked out the window, the sunlight glinting off the water like fractured glass. "Someone who knows what's still buried." That night, despite every warning his mind screamed, he went. The Senate Hotel sat quiet and half-forgotten near Union Station, its marble lobby echoing with ghosts of politicians long gone. Ethan took the elevator to the 4th floor. The hallway smelled faintly of old cigars and bleach. Room 412 was at the end. The door was ajar. "Hello," he called softly. A woman stepped out of the shadows, Torres, but not the confident agent he'd known. This version looked hunted. Her hair was tied back messily, and her clothes were civilian, not bureau. "Close the door," she said. He did. "What's going on?" Torres handed him a flash drive. This wasn't supposed to exist. Someone inside the task force you helped start has been leaking intel to the same offshore groups we dismantled. They rebuilt under new shells, new names, same money. And one of the people funding them sits in the cabinet. Ethan's stomach tightened. Which one? Torres hesitated. The Secretary of Commerce, Harold Price. Ethan blinked. He chaired the ethics task force. Exactly, she said grimly. He used it to identify threats, people who could expose him. 2 journalists disappeared last month. One was looking into Price's investments. Ethan's pulse quickened. Why come to me? You have the bureau. Torres shook her head. I don't have anyone I can trust there anymore. I'm already flagged for surveillance. You, on the other hand, you're clean. Public trust. Media access. If anyone can force this out into daylight again, it's you. Ethan stared at the flash drive, its small metallic body seeming to hum with consequence. What's on it? Proof, Torres said. Contracts, accounts, wire transfers. Enough to burn Price's career and maybe his friends with it. Ethan looked up. How long do I have? Not long. I'm leaving the country tonight. They'll come for me by morning. He wanted to stop her, to demand a plan. But she was already moving toward the door. Ethan, she said, turning back. Don't let them win this time. Finish it. Then she was gone. He stood there for a long moment, the flash drive heavy in his palm. The weight of old fear settled over him again, the kind he'd thought he'd buried forever. The next day, he called Ellis and Jennifer to a private meeting. They listened in silence as he explained what Torres had given him. Ellis whistled low. You realize what happens if this leaks? Price is tied to half the infrastructure bills in Congress. We'll be fighting the federal machine itself. Jennifer's voice was soft but steady. Then we fight smarter. We use transparency like a weapon. Ethan nodded. Agreed. But we keep Anna out of it this time. They set up a temporary workspace in the office basement. Ellis analyzed the data while Jennifer drafted a release strategy. The files showed billions siphoned from federal projects into dummy corporations connected to Price's allies. There were memos implicating defense contractors, even foreign donors. As they worked, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. That night, as he drove home through the rain, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. A distorted voice said, "You should have stayed grateful, Mr. Walker. You had your redemption. Why ruin it?" Ethan's hands tightened on the wheel. Who is this? You don't need to know my name, the voice replied. But you'll know what we can do. The call ended. A second later, his dashboard screen lit up a video feed from inside his own home. Anna asleep on the couch, Loretta folding laundry in the background. Ethan slammed the brakes, pulling onto the shoulder. His heart roared in his chest. Then the screen went black. He drove like a man possessed. When he reached the townhouse, the door was wide open. Loretta stood trembling in the foyer. They came, she whispered. Men in suits said they were from security services. Her voice broke. Where's Anna? Ethan demanded. Loretta pointed upstairs, eyes wet. Gone. They took her. Ethan's world collapsed into a single pulse of soundless rage. Within minutes, he was back in his car, calling Jennifer. They have Anna. Price's people took her. Jennifer's voice cracked. Oh my God, Ethan. What do we do? He stared into the storm ahead. Every drop of rain like a spark of fury. We end this, he said. Whatever it takes. And somewhere, deep in the labyrinth of power, Harold Price poured himself a glass of scotch and watched security footage of Ethan's empty home. He smiled. Round 2 begins. The night air cut like glass. Wind screamed across the Potomac, driving cold rain sideways as if the heavens themselves were trying to wash the city clean. Ethan stood by his car at the base of the bridge, the same bridge where nearly 2 years before he'd almost ended his life. Now he was here again, fighting to save the only life that gave his own meaning. Jennifer's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Ethan, are you sure this is where they'll bring her?" "Yes," he said, eyes fixed on the faint glow of headlights ahead. "Price chose this place for a reason. Symbolism. He wants control, wants me to see what happens when I defy him." Ellis's voice joined in, tense and low. "We've got the FBI monitoring the feed you sent. Torres's old contacts are ready, but we need visual confirmation before they move." Ethan adjusted the small camera pinned to his jacket. "You'll get it. Just be ready." The headlights resolved into 2 black SUVs that stopped halfway across the bridge. 4 men in dark suits stepped out first. Then another figure emerged, tall, composed, face shadowed beneath an umbrella. Harold Price, and beside him, Anna. Her wrists were bound, her small coat soaked through, but her chin was lifted in that stubborn way Ethan knew too well. Price's voice carried easily through the storm. "Mr. Walker, we meet at last, without the stage lights or the self-righteous headlines." Ethan took 1 step forward, hands open. "Let her go, Price. She's a child. She doesn't belong in your war." Price smiled thinly. "Everything belongs to the war, Ethan. You just never learned that. You think truth has power? It doesn't. Power has power." Ethan's jaw clenched. "You've already lost. Torres's drive. The files. You can't bury them this time." "Oh, I can't bury them," Price said softly. "But I can bury you. And when the city hears that the disgraced billionaire who once fooled the nation tried to stage another scandal, well, who'll believe your ghost?" He nodded to one of the guards. The man stepped forward, gun glinting beneath the streetlight. Anna whimpered, but didn't cry. Ethan raised his voice. "Price, look at her. She's 7 years old. You think history will forgive you for this?" Price's eyes hardened. History only remembers the survivors. And then the first shot cracked the air. Ethan dove sideways as the bullet slammed into the railing behind him, sparks flying. He rolled, came up behind the fender of his car. Another shot whined off metal. "Jennifer," he shouted into the mic now. From the darkness beyond the bridge, floodlights exploded to life. FBI vehicles screeched into position on both ends, agents shouting commands through bullhorns. "Federal Bureau of Investigation. Drop your weapons." Price froze for half a heartbeat, just long enough for Ethan to move. He sprinted forward, tackling the guard nearest Anna. The man's gun went off once, harmlessly into the night. Before he slammed him to the ground. Another guard swung his weapon, but a sniper round from the far embankment took him down instantly. Anna stumbled free, running toward Ethan. He caught her, pulling her behind him as Price drew his own pistol. "You still don't get it, Walker," Price shouted over the storm. "If I go down, half this city burns with me." Ethan's voice was raw. "Then let it burn." Price fired. The shot caught Ethan in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. Pain exploded white-hot down his arm. He fell to one knee, but stayed between Price and Anna. Price advanced slowly, rain dripping from his face. "You should have stayed quiet. You could have rebuilt your little charity and played the hero." Ethan raised his head, blood mixing with rain on his cheek. "You know what's funny, Price?" he rasped. "I used to think I needed billions to matter. Turns out I only needed one reason to stand up again." Price hesitated, and that was all it took. Torres stepped from behind a patrol SUV, weapon leveled, flanked by 2 agents. "Harold Price," she called, voice cutting through the wind. "Drop the gun. It's over." Price turned, fury twisting his face. "You're supposed to be gone." Torres's finger tightened on the trigger. "I came back to finish what we started." For a moment, everything held still, the rain, the wind, the breath of everyone on the bridge. Then Price's hand twitched upward. 2 shots rang out almost as one. Price staggered backward, his pistol clattering across the pavement. He looked stunned, more surprised than pained, before collapsing near the railing. Torres lowered her weapon, chest heaving. "Clear," she shouted. Agents swarmed forward, securing the scene. Ethan slumped against the rail, clutching his bleeding shoulder. Anna crawled beside him, eyes wide. "Mr. E, you're hurt." He managed a faint smile. "I've been worse, kid." "You okay?" She nodded fiercely. "I wasn't scared." "Not really." "Braver than me," he whispered. Torres knelt beside them, pressing gauze to his wound. "Ambulance is 2 minutes out." "You did it, Walker." He winced. "No, we did it." "And Torres, thank you." She gave a tight smile. "You can buy me coffee when you're not bleeding." Hours later, as dawn crept pale and gold over the river, the bridge was quiet again. The flashing lights had faded. The agents gone. A fighter, and a man finally whole, understood that redemption wasn't something you earned. It was something you chose, one act of courage, one person, one small voice at a time. The bridge that had nearly claimed his life had given it back instead. And in the fragile warmth of a new dawn, that was enough. The story of Ethan Walker reminds us that true wealth has nothing to do with money, power, or success. It lives in integrity, compassion, and courage. When Ethan lost everything, he discovered what truly mattered, the strength to stand for what is right, even when it costs you everything. Through a child's innocent wisdom, he learned that our lives aren't meant to serve ourselves alone. They're meant to touch others, to bring light where the world has gone dark. In the end, Ethan's redemption wasn't found in reclaiming his fortune, but in reclaiming his humanity, the understanding that love, truth, and courage are the only riches that can never be stolen.